becomes more immediate needs and things need to happen outside of the project. And one of those I'll talk a little bit about when we sort of go through these. So in front of you, the capital improvement plan, which is the first worksheet that is the projects, is you can see that there's sort of 3 subtables under this large table. And so the first one represents things that believe to have a good scope and a good assessment of when these things need to be looked at. And so the first one is the $57 million that we're requesting for the nursing home renovation. Lumped into that is.
I've got the vehicle one, but I don't have the long.
Is it on the flip side?
Oh, duh, okay.
Do you want me to print those out on this
No,
size
no,
paper?
I can,
Okay.
I can turn it over,
Okay.
I've got my glasses.
So as you know, lumped in there is a lot of deferred maintenance and other aging equipment needs related to the operation of the nursing home. And so as we move forward and looking at what this spring looks like in terms of approvals, we'll also have to take a look at what we feel can still be maintained over the of construction. And so that hasn't been identified outside of the total scope of the project. I spoke at the last commissioners meeting about what we've learned about the HVAC control system for the corrections unit, and that the money that's currently approved and was authorized to move forward with Johnson's Controls represent the first phase, asking for the second phase of that, which also serve the nursing home as well as far as connectivity, and then also upgrades the remainder of the jail system. So that will be a big step to move forward in the corrections building to get that under control. If we look at another long-term project that has been moved forward that we probably want to have a broader conversation about is the medical and observation unit. This project's been in planning since I started here, and the need for it has reduced a little bit because of the fact that the census is so low at the jail that Dave and his crew have been able to work around it, but the need is still there, and it's a matter of addressing what the priority is in the county scope. And I think it took a little bit of a backseat as we worked through the design of the nursing home. So we currently have $30,000 approved for an initial design. I think that actually gets us a pretty good way through the design. But what I've proposed here is within the next couple of years to move forward with that project. And in conversations that I've had with Dave is that scope could become a larger priority if in fact something changed with the census that he has in the jail.
Well, at some point, yeah, one of my favorite sayings, the pendulum never stops in the middle. At some point, it's gonna swing back and they'll start to realize some people need to be in jail.
Yeah.
Have we let a contract for that design yet?
No, we haven't.
Okay.
No, and that was mostly because of just the constraints on my time dealing with the nursing home project. So
I don't know if it'd be worth it to get a design now until we know we're gonna do it. Maybe get a design a few months before we actually know we're gonna jump into the project. And make sure the EFC's okay that appropriation, because that's a pretty good chunk.
yeah, the 30,000 is we've had that was approved, I think 2 years ago. I don't think this year, I think maybe last year. And that money has been assigned. So we have the $30,000 assigned. But yeah, the cost number for the total project was based off of, there was some feasibility designs that were done a number of years ago that I worked through with Dave to come up with sort of what we felt would be the best option to move forward. And I had used those numbers at that time to come up with an estimate, but it is a large number. when we take a look at the amount of work that needs to be done to accommodate a true observation unit and a true medical space for the services that they provide, which I can only imagine get more and more
Yeah,
intense with some of the things that they're doing down there.
And yeah, that's, if nothing else, needs to wait until we have a superintendent in place too.
Right, and well, that's the other thing too, is that, you know, with the changeover, is that something that we want to have, you know, the new person might have a different perspective on things than what we do now, so, so this was the best, my recommendation on how to sort of keep the money that we have currently in case we find an opportunity to move forward on the design.
Yeah.
And then, have that be a priority in the next couple of years.
yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
So where does that 30,000 sit? Is that something that we have to encumber in every budget cycle, or is it in a place somewhere where it's protected at the end of the budget cycle?
We assign it, or the Board of Commissioners, it's part of the assignments that the board votes on at the end of each fiscal year. So at the end of the year, we present a list of things we would like to keep open, and you preserve that by voting to move those forward.
Okay,
Yeah, I mean, once we have a superintendent, if, you know, maybe we do it, you and he with a contractor or something to do a thumbnail. I know I'm out of touch with buildings, but it just seems like a horrendously high number for.
Well, having the design that would actually help refine that estimate. too.
Yeah,
So I'd be
yeah.
all in favor of, let's get a new superintendent. I think that is prudent.
Mhm.
Sometime over this next year, maybe at least move forward with the design and we stop and we wait.
Mhm.
And we can, obviously, the longer we wait, the more that design estimate of the construction cost will go up, but that's okay. At least it'll be a shovel-ready project, and perhaps maybe, you know, there'll be grant money down the road or something like that that would help offset it.
I would recommend we have a delegate involved in this.
Oh, yeah,
Mhm.
yeah,
Not
rather,
even, don't even go out for a design process until we get a delegate involved,
Yeah,
because then it just
might save
takes
some
all
time,
that,
another year.
you know, those 5 and 6 steps of days of questioning and why'd you do this and why'd you do that? So I would recommend.
sorry, I'm just trying to get out of the fan. It's blowing hot air on me.
No.
I feel like I'm in the hot
I
seat.
know it's not a multi-million-dollar project, but still, probably wouldn't hurt to involve them in the decision.
Mhm. Okay. So the Unity Campus camera surveillance system, that's $150,000. That is something that, it actually is within the scope of the renovation and addition for the nursing home. However, I've pulled it out. I think it's something that we should consider sooner than later. And I went back and forth between putting it at FY23 and FY24. And so I think that's something that we can have further conversations on, is due to some circumstances that we've had around the campus more recently. I think we would be better served to talk about upgrading the camera system that we have around the exterior of the entire campus as well as interior to the nursing home. And so I just think that that's something that we should look at sooner than later. Now, where that money is also included in the larger renovation, if that gets approved, then that would need to get approved as a separate project. But I thought it was important to pull that out because I feel like that's a topic of conversation we should have sooner than later.
Why don't we move that into the budget this year?
Okay.
And is that still gonna be through Red Hawk?
No, this would be a separate system. Do you want to talk? Dave and I have been working on this a little bit together. And we had a third party give us a rough estimate of what we would need, but this is more kind of your expertise if you want to pipe in.
Yeah, we had Keith Donna from Palmac come and discuss the system at the DOC and discuss putting a system in the nursing home. Palmac or no agencies want to work with the system that we currently have in the jail. They don't want to work with that patch. They would have to rip it out and start again. He did meet with Ted, walk the nursing home, and they're local. they're not coming from Massachusetts, so they're a really good vendor to work with. They're on site when you need them, and they're, it's a great product, you get it and don't have. Also working with, children incarcerated, because they have a ton of money coming in New Hampshire. They're asking the DOCs how to spend it down. It's more money than they think they can spend down, but it's gotta be geared towards benefiting the offender population.
Mhm.
And, the affiliate asked for $4 million for software upgrades in all the jails. We also asked for $4 million for camera upgrades in all the jails. So if that money comes our way, the state's managing a grant, which is gonna be a benefit of it. And we could potentially use some of that money on the grounds. We won't use $400,000 to use it.
Well, and lest this one go to waste if the renovation moves forward, it's just, would be a little bit more
No,
construction.
right, we would-
Working around it and moving it, but it
Yeah.
wouldn't be a,
We would do it in a smart way.
Yeah.
To
Yeah.
not put in something that we know
Well, and it
is
would
just gonna
be
be ripped
compatible,
out.
compatible equipment, so.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and I think for, even though the goal is long-term, is to have a nursing home that is fully covered with cameras where appropriate, is this initial phase of it could just be the exterior and the main entrances and some key spaces, knowing that it wouldn't be wise to completely outfit the nursing home moving forward, but we could benefit a lot by having some key areas cameraed.
Is this a wireless system or is it wired?
I believe it'd be a wired system.
Wired?
Mhm.
yeah, I mean, somebody should be there trying to come in or
Mhm.
walk away, you know,
Yeah.
the small money compared to somebody walking off.
Well, just the problems you have with Red Hot. I mean, it would be nice to get something that dependable.
Yeah, someone who's coming from New Hampshire, preferably.
Yeah.
Pelmax does an excellent job with technologies.
Yeah, I think anything that, we've waited and waited and waited with this project, and things that we can jump and move into and get them moving, I think we ought to do
Okay.
that.
Do other counties have a single vendor that looks over, say if they've got a campus like ours where the jail and the nursing home are co-located? Do they have like single vendor camera systems
Pelmac does.
down that? Okay,
They use Pelmac, and it's in the sheriff's department nursing home in the DOC.
Okay.
So you get service is fantastic. When they're on site, they're in all 3 facilities, which is really, really helpful.
do we know what other counties are doing? As far as different vendors or just different setups?
I don't know.
I'm not really sure. I think Carroll County works with one vendor. I can get that information.
I mean, obviously, we'd have to bid this out, so I guess we'll find out probably who's working with other counties, because I'm sure they'll come flocking, especially for a requirement like this.
Mhm.
Being, they don't like with Red Hawk, if we need a part, it could take them a month to get it, then a month to install it, so
Yeah.
it's just not ideal.
Okay. So the next one I have on here is Woodhill Courthouse Access Control Replacement. That's a requirement that was coming forward from the sheriff's office to replace the key access in this building in the courthouse. He had given me an estimate of $30,000, and I'm not sure if he was indicating that was something he wanted to have in this year's budget. And I also had TBDs there, as I wasn't sure. I guess the timing on that letter was great, but I wasn't sure how that was impacting with some of the holdbacks that we're doing on the work here in Newport. So that just needs a little bit of clarification, but I'm gonna guess that the sheriff is gonna want me to put that in the budget this year.
Are they noted to wear out over time, those keypads?
Originally, we had looked to upgrade that because we didn't have the type of remote control. So one of the things back when we were discussing, do we let, like the Opera House, if there's a night function, how can we let them come in without having to call in a deputy to do
Yeah.
overtime? Those existing controls can't do that. So part of it was, yes, the stuff's pretty old. I don't know that it's failing per se, but if we were going to upgrade it to provide some of that remote, the ability to turn on and off the locking.
Yeah.
It would have to be an upgraded system, so I'm sure we'll talk about it more during the budget
All right.
build when the sheriff gets his, we would probably need more information from him prior to that, so that you have an idea of what we're looking at, but.
So the next two projects on here are related to infrastructure. And so one is the drinking water storage replacement. And so this is one that I recently developed several different options for and applied for the grant from NHDES. And we did not receive that grant. However, they identified an different upcoming grant period that we might have more luck in. So we'll apply for that as well. And so the anticipated funding request, it's 400,000 to 1.8 million. And what that represents is 400,000 would be to completely replace the enclosure around the existing tanks and also to build a proper road in from Second New Hampshire Turnpike. And also upgrade some of the controls. Currently on those tanks, we have no really monitoring. We have just a very rudimentary device that if the water drops too low, it calls a phone number. But there's really no monitoring on a day-to-day basis other than us checking it physically. And then, as we've talked before, as the actual envelope around those tanks is not as, it's in aged condition as well as susceptible to wildlife entering those buildings. So that, in combined with our other water issue that's also been on the plan for quite some time, is the fire suppression line that runs from the fire pond to Marshall Pond. And so that has been on the plan since I've started here. We attempted, when we were developing the asset management plan, we attempted to find a way to test the integrity of that line because of its length and its size. We struggled with trying to find a way to test that line, having talked to several different resources, we were not able to come up with a good solution to test that. So one of the things that has developed in this conversation, looking at these two potential projects, is do we really know currently what our design storage requirements should be? Is we have the current water tanks that were built based on an old series of drinking water wells. We now have two wells that are really high producers. And then also two is the need for that water to come from Marshall Pond. We have more area that is covered by fire suppression, but at the same time too, is that fire suppression systems are now better designed, and you actually they serve the areas more efficiently than they did, back in the 60s. So one of the things that I'm proposing is I had originally put this together to have some full design dollars in here for the next year, but I think what is probably more appropriate is probably putting in this budget somewhere probably around $15,000, where we can actually have our needs calculated and just really start the conversation to be, this is how much water we need to have access to, and then start to design from that. Because if it's something that we take a look at doing a completely new tank for drinking water storage, well, is that something that we could use the old tanks for fire suppression storage, for example? But I think someone needs to come in and help us with those calculations to understand what our true needs are, rather than just working with what we have already.
Two thoughts, one for you, one probably for Lyle. On the camera upgrades, that might be a location for a camera when we're doing nursing
Yep.
homes and for monitoring. And the pond on the hill, Lionel, that doesn't exist without feed from Marshall Pond?
That's
Or-
right.
okay,
It's
good.
a wet spot, so it might get some water to it, but
Not enough,
Nothing-
it
nothing
wouldn't
like
stay
what
full without
has
Marshall
been.
Pond, okay.
Right, and that's the way we monitor, we also monitored the integrity of the Marshall Pond line. Because if for some reason there was a major leak, that pipe burst and that water was no longer making it to that that pond would lose its draw,
You'd have a
so.
big wet spot in the woods somewhere.
So, yeah,
That's what I thought, but I wanted to double check that.
There's gotta be a better solution than spending that kind of money.
yeah, so I think that's the thing is, that's the starting point. And neither one of these are super immediate concerns, as in that needs to be done next year at this time. And so I think if we take the course of action where we truly define what our needs are.
Yeah.
And then make sure that we're working towards the right solution. So those are those two projects. The retubing for biomass is a scheduled replacement for FY '26 based on the age of the system. Also carrying at the end of the project, do a paving replacement in the employee lot for the nursing home. We did some maintenance last year that will help us get there. Oops, I have the surveillance system on here twice. The second phase of washer replacements for Unity, we did 3 this year. And there's 2 remaining left to do, so we're proposing those for this fiscal year. And so Woodhull elevator maintenance is, although most of the Woodhull is grouped down below, this is one of the issues that we probably should look at moving forward and at least phasing. So we originally were throwing around a number of 275,000. That represented a new elevator that provided more access to the upper house, and it gave us that control. When I went back and looked through what it actually required to bring it back up to today, there was this mechanical upgrade, electrical upgrade, and then replacement of the jack. And so 75,000 represented the mechanical and electrical upgrades, and 100,000 represented the jack replacement. So looked at phasing those over the next couple of years in order to make sure that we stay on top of those things. So that could also become part of a broader conversation about the future use of this building as well. Yeah.
That was, the last time we talked about it, we talked about waiting until it hard broke.
Right.
So this would be a departure
Mhm.
from that, from those marching orders. If we still want to wait, then we'll just,
Well, no matter what we do with the building, we're probably still gonna use the elevator. So it's probably smarter to get it fixed, get it worked on. It's been pretty reliable.
yeah, I mean, if we waited for it to break, then it
Yeah.
becomes a crisis.
Yeah.
And it requires us to drop everything else we're doing for a certain amount of time.
Mhm.
And then it's gonna be still out of service for several months, which the state will raise holy, you know what,
Yeah,
with us during that time, although there won't be anything that anybody can do other than complain about it.
no, we probably should work on it.
So, Ahern, we have currently just under $150,000 approved for that based on previous years. And so that was to improve the accessibility as well as some deferred maintenance items. Now that we have the function of Ahern as far as the meeting room in the renovation, this also brings into does our plan change whether the renovation goes through or not? And so when I talked earlier about sort of the hinge and domino effect on things, this is something that's been in a holding pattern while we wait for that. From a use wise, we're still okay. But one of the things that we need to take a look at is that the roof is degrading pretty quickly.
Yeah.
And so that needs to be done sooner than later. But I think what we need to take a look at from a planning perspective as a group is what the long-term use of that building would be if the renovation moves forward and we no longer need that for a function space. And, you know, from my perspective, once we found out that there was asbestos in the drywall, any renovations to that building become pretty costly. And so the most functional part of that building, once you do the renovation and create a new space for the gathering space, is the garage space underneath. And so do we go as far as to say that we demo that top floor and just put a new roof on it and keep it as a garage? Or do we look to modify that space into something else? So I think that's a broader conversation. Again, once we understand where the project's going to move forward and how we deal with that, and we'll continue to monitor the roof condition, but we may be forced to make a decision sooner than later
So can
on
we-
that.
Can we still continue to use the upstairs for DOC meeting and training space?
Currently now, yeah.
without Tearing out the asbestos, I mean, the
Yes.
asbestos is okay as long
Yeah.
as we don't.
Yep, as long as you don't dig
For
into
sure.
it, you're fine. Yeah, it's perfectly fine for use. It's just a matter of, really limiting what we can do, for the amount of
Changing.
money.
Is the
Yeah,
roofing just new shingles?
just
or-
new shingles,
okay.
yeah.
So shingles and siding
Mhm.
are
Would
a
be
must
bare
do,
minimum.
and then we get more use out of it in its current configuration.
Mhm.
We minimize our cost, but it presumes that the nursing home has been approved and goes forward, and we have that
We don't
community
have-
space.
Yeah, we don't have to change the roof lines for new bathrooms and stuff.
Exactly.
Correct.
And with the money that's already been assigned, we probably can get some, if not all of it,
Mhm.
done for what's already been, so we don't,
Yeah.
no new expenses, I guess. is the
Right,
next
we
thing.
can get what we need to protect that asset as it is. We can certainly get that done. But really to think about if we need to use that as for a different use, like if there was a talk about turning it into
Mhm.
offices or turning it into something else,
I think it's really
the
expensive.
cost of it would be much more than we expected. Well, it already is more expensive than we thought to begin with, but now we would have to consider abatement in addition to that as well. So we can continue to use it the way that it is with just the maintenance things, so. And the other one that's out there for a long-term goal in terms of timing is the Heifer Barn. Currently, that is we use it for just some basic storage. Some of it is used by the farmer that has a land rental from Lionel. Bruce Ferland, thank you. And then it's just understanding in the long range plan of the Unity campus is where that fits in and what we would need to do to increase the longevity of that building. The next group of projects is really grouped together in terms of having the discussion at some point about what our long-term goals are for the buildings here in Newport. And so some of that revolves around the relationship with the town of Newport, including separating the complexes between the two. There have been identified a need for window replacement in this building, as well as heating pipe replacement and window replacement in the records building. So that's a broader conversation that I think we should look at over the course of this next year and come up with what our plan is in that arena.
So one recommendation about how we approach this, we start at the very, very most high level question that we need answered. And that's a question that has to be asked to the state and say to the state, okay, there are 10 county superior courthouses in the state, ranging from ones built in 1885 here in Newport and ones that are less than 10 years old. They really control kind of their own version of a CIP, or at least they should be, for what their long-range plans are. So I don't know what those plans are. I have no idea if there's any talk at the state level about renovating this facility, about having a new facility. I suspect, given that their hesitancy to spend money. They probably don't have a capital project ready to go. I think the most recent project that was done was financed by a third-party developer, the one down in Cheshire County. So if they had a desire to move forward, it probably would be using that model where they just continue to be a rent payer and they would lease space that's provided by a third-party developer. Again, I have no clue if they're even thinking about that.
And the
but-
elevator folds into that too, before we spend a whole lot of money on the elevator.
Well, so, yeah, so that's kind of like the big question, because a lot of what we do here in Newport is really, there's an umbilical cord to the court function. If that court function moves, we would have to seriously consider moving with it. So I think that's kind of the first question that needs to, if the state says there's nothing in the next 10 to 15 years, then we have to then look at what we might do to make this space more efficient, and less costly. Part of that would be tied to the nursing home project. If this office space becomes vacant, as we've discussed, what would we do with it? And sort of the options would be, well, we know the sheriff needs more space, county attorney needs more space, but then we also have the records building that if we could find a better home for UNH, well, that's something we could potentially divest. That would save us some money. It would avoid some future projects that we've talked about for the records building, where we could avoid all that if we were able to go like this. So those are all things that we're not going to solve those today, but it's something that needs to be on the radar for what different options we might have. First of all, predicated on the state, second of all, predicated on the nursing home going forward. And then, depending on what the answers are for those first two, we then have space here that we should do something with. And then the something kind of comes down to the cost and benefit analysis of either sheriff's, county attorney, or UNH. I did actually just talk to Penelope this morning, just, what has shifted with the cooperative extensions daily battle rhythm as a result of COVID. And what they have found is they're actually pretty effective with telework. And I'm not sure going forward, we're going to see the exact same physical footprint that we have traditionally seen, which I think helps, because I think it would have been a tight squeeze for them to completely relocate all their personnel over to here. But if it's a smaller footprint, then I think it's probably a much easier project. Again, if that was the number one thing we wanted to achieve, was to consolidate our footprint a little bit. It doesn't solve the sheriff's issue. It doesn't solve the county attorney's issue, but anyway, so a lot of moving parts. But to the extent that we can be prepared mentally to be thinking about those options, I think helps inform the CIP.
Well, we should put one of them behind us fairly quickly now, the nursing home. We should have an answer on that pretty quick. So,
And then figuring out what to backfill this space with would be the next.
So the last block are projects that we've identified through the course of either sort of being on the list before I got here, to other topics that have come up. And it's really to understand, to further develop the project intent or the appetite for these types of things. And so the first one is a solar array for power generation for the Unity complex. We had a presentation on that a couple of years ago. It's something that's been talked about here or there, but it's understanding from the Board of Commissioners on, is there a desire to gather more information on that as things have changed over the last couple of years? The second one is, there's a current line that goes from the nursing home to the radio tower. That at some point needs to be replaced or buried or something. It's really unclear who owns that line and who's responsible to get power to the radio tower, but at some point that needs to be addressed. We've carried the county farm road paving, which is actually a Unity road. However, we've carried that as a possible project, knowing that it's on the bottom of Unity's priority list. However, it has a big impact on not only our vehicles, but our staff's vehicles as well too. And the last one is, there was talk during last year's budget about a drainage and rehabilitation to the shooting range in Unity. So those are projects that are still sort of being developed and we've had conversations about, but are really in the infancy when we start to talk about putting a plan together over the next 5 years.
I thought the county farm road was paved last year. No?
They had what they had left in a truck one day, they dropped off.
Fill a couple
That didn't
holes.
fix it?
No, that did not fix it.
Yeah, I don't think they're gonna fix it for us.
No.
Me
And
too.
I imagine at the end of a renovation project, they will tell us that we damaged the road and
Yeah.
make us fix it anyway,
Yeah.
so,
That would be
but.
my guess.
But, that sort of gives an overview of where the CIP is sort of shaping up to be for this year. And, some things I think that we could benefit as a group with the commissioners sitting down and maybe having a few sessions over the course of the year to talk about what your goals are, for some of these longer term plans. And then really it gives us opportunity for next year's CIP to really dig in. Once we know the state of the nursing home project, hopefully here soon, and then have a better understanding of how that impacts sort of those dominoes across the rest of the county. So the second page that you have is a layout of all the vehicles. I did do the vehicles over the course of 7 years to just try to incorporate more of the lifespan of some of the vehicles that we have. So the top section is those associated with the county departments. I've worked with I worked with Dave and Ted on what their vision is for replacements for their vehicles. And so we have a good plan for cycling through the transport van that's being replaced by the sheriff's office to help move and offset some of the purchases for corrections. So corrections is looking for not this fiscal year, but next fiscal year, 24, is replacing their cruiser, followed by their transport van, and cycling those down through to help replace ultimately the transport truck, meal truck that they have. And typically facilities, our van comes either from corrections or the sheriff's when they're done as well too. So those vehicles are pushed down to try to get the maximum use out of them that we can for those types of use. From the facility side of things, we've spent a lot of money and a lot of effort over the last few years reinvesting in some of our equipment. We still are struggling with the dump truck. And so looking to be that our highest priority vehicle that we would like to have another conversation during this year's budget about replacing that. Currently, our 2 tractors, we have $30,000 that was previously approved to buy a used tractor. We have not been successful in finding something that meets that budget or in either buying an additional tractor or using that towards trade-in for our current tractor. What I'm going to propose this year, well, it's actually doesn't really affect the budget, but what I would like to talk about at a future commissioners meeting, once we get some more information from some inspections on it, is taking that 30,000 and reinvesting it in extending the life of our current tractors and trying to get a few more years out of them. That I think once we have an understanding of what that looks like, then we can evaluate if that's worth doing that or not, versus moving up the purchase of the replacement tractors for those. The pickup truck we feel is in good condition, and so that's put out there a number of years. As far as the nursing home, their most immediate need is for a replacement of the wheelchair van, which I think is at least into FY24, if not further than that. And then after that, they do have some needs with the activities bus and eventually the laundry truck. But if you take a look at where, what the years of our vehicles are now versus a anticipated replacement cycle, we've surpassed some of the typical life expectancies of vehicles currently. So it's balancing that decision on how we're gonna manage the vehicles in terms of getting the last possible use out of them or replacing them before things go wrong. And I think it's one of the things that I've tried to balance over the last few years that I've been here is implementing a good maintenance structure and preventative maintenance plan that allows us to assess on a better timetable. And frankly, in I guess shorter words, take better care of the stuff that we have. And I feel like we've gotten to the point where that we are doing that versus prior to when I got here, but we've also started to extend lives past what becomes reliable for things. And as people's different departments' needs change, that changes too. The bottom section is the sheriff's department, which shows,
Can I, ask-
yeah,
Or do you
absolutely.
wanna wait to the end?
This is gonna be real
Alright.
short, so, and then we can talk about vehicles altogether. The bottom represents the sheriff's department, which reflects his previous or current replacement cycle of every 4 years. So that's the information that I have on the sheriff's department.
Yeah, I think we ought to look into 6 years on that replacement. I checked the value, I don't know if you've ever looked at that, Ben, but the value of these things, even after 4 years, it's still,
Well, the SUVs are ruggeder than the
I
cars.
mean,
you
it's
would
right
hope.
up there.
Yeah.
It's, so, I think 4 years is,
Yeah.
it's like throwing a new car out. So,
Yeah, good thought, because they're ruggeder than the
Yeah.
sedans were.
So there'd be much less salvage value at 6, but I think what we'd see probably is
But
a lot cheaper in the long run.
even the salvage value at 6.
Yeah.
Only dropped like $6,000. I mean, it's still worth over 10
Yeah.
10 grand, even at 6 years old,
Yeah.
with 150,000 miles on them. They still have a fairly good value.
Where the sedans were almost worthless at
Yeah.
4 years.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Well, it's a brand new fleet, right? So the time to have that discussion with the sheriff is now to say,
Yeah.
let's plan for that. What does that
Yeah.
plan look like?
Yeah.
I don't know if there's any sort of like, well, shoot, Commissioner Osgood, I don't know what used to be a law enforcement lawman back in the day. So I don't know if there's resources that used to say, okay, is this 4 years because that's the way it's always been? Or is it 4 years because generally speaking, the way these vehicles are used in the course of doing law enforcement type duties, are the vehicles just junk at that point? Of course, then you have to say, well, our cars made better these days, are these SUVs better, like you were just saying? So I think it's a good discussion that we should probably have.
Yeah, and the SUVs are built stronger than the sedans. So I think you could expect more mileage out of them. The one thing you gotta watch out for is rust.
Yeah.
That, doesn't matter how well they're built, if the fenders are falling off them, they're not good for police work.
That's
Too
what they
much
make
drag
Bondo.
on there.
That's why there's Bondo, right?
Well, and I think
That's
that's
right.
the discussion we ought to have is, especially with the new fleet, undercoating of
Yeah.
some type, either fluid film or oil.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah,
worth,
We
it's
do
worth
that-
it.
we do that already though. I would think, right?
I don't know about the sheriff's
We do,
department.
but I don't think the sheriff does.
We do on
Okay.
all of the county vehicles. We have done it every other year. In some cases for our plowing equipment, we've done it every year.
But I don't know, I'm assuming the sheriff doesn't, but that's an assumption we ought to
I
find
don't
out,
know.
Yeah, easy enough.
especially where it's a new fleet.
So the question I had on the top part for the other county requirements, it's roughly $700,000 over 7 years. But it's not necessarily a 7-year life cycle, right? So some of these things, like the
Correct.
dump truck is currently 17 years old.
Mhm.
And based on what you were just saying, you wouldn't necessarily recommend we go 17 with the next one, however, we might, because it isn't used a lot. So we don't necessarily have to have $100,000 a year for our
No,
allocation, but we've only been setting aside 40. So if that number needs to change, I guess maybe we did try to use this and do some
Mhm.
forecasting. Because we will run out of money in FY '24.
Right,
If we have to, we set aside 40, so for FY '23, we would need to dip into what's in the bank for
Yeah.
35. I think there's 120 right now. And then next year, we would need to dip in for 75, and then we'd be out.
Yeah.
mhm,
So for FY '25, we would need to be, providing more. So anyway, just trying
Yeah.
to think about what we've been setting aside versus what we need to be setting aside. That might need to change,
mhm.
or at least let's acknowledge that by FY '25, what we've been putting away for this will be empty.
Right, and what we've set aside specifically for the county vehicles is a lot less than what was set aside for the sheriff's vehicles, because
Right.
that was, we realized 2 years ago that of the amount that was being set aside for vehicles, it was only enough to cover the sheriff's fleet at every 4 years. And so that's why we increased it to now cover that. So we have less that is specifically set aside for county vehicles. And it would have to, like you said, we would have to draw out of the regular capital reserve.
Yeah.
Until we got to a position where we could tackle some of these things. So it's not as segregated, as of yet, as the sheriff's department is.
So as a reminder, every year we budget 600,000 for capital. And then out of that, we carve out the 3 transfers to reserves. And it's been 40,000 for other county vehicles, 40,000 for 27 pay periods. And it was 70,000 for the sheriff's fleet. We bumped that up to 100. So now out of that 600, 180,000 gets taken off the top and put in the bank for these 3 things, which leaves us with 420. So if the other county vehicles needs to change from 40 to something else, and we'd have to probably crunch some numbers to figure out, is that 60, is that 70? Now we're having less and less left over for other capital requirements, which may be okay. That may be the right answer still. 600 might still be a good number. But anyway, just food for thought about how we have typically budgeted for capital and then manage those funds as we go forward.
Yeah.
Um,
I can see maintaining the tractors. You can probably get more life out of a tractor.
Mhm.
But when you get to your dump trucks and things like that, you're not getting any more life out of them.
Mhm.
Once they go, they go.
Mhm.
Um,
Yeah, and then again, it's more rust, was, my guess is the
Yeah.
dump truck, I mean, last time we talked about changing it was, I don't know, 3 or 4 years and it only had 10,000, it was 10 years old, but it only had 10,000 miles.
Yeah, the miles, at the same time, the miles on our vehicles and the hours on our tractors don't reflect the heavy duty work that they do. And
Yeah.
so it can be deceptive when you take a look at the mileage, and you would think that they should get a lot more, but they've taken a lot of use.
Well, compared to a construction company, that truck is lightly used, it's
Yeah.
not like, I mean, it's not used hard
Yeah.
every day, like, Fred's landscaping or Fred's construction or
Mhm,
something would be
mhm.
doing, it's still getting pretty light duty.
Yeah, the salt is a killer.
Yeah.
The salt is a killer.
And the other thing I wanted to get your 2 cents on the first page is on the solar array. It's something that we've talked about a little bit before. We've had unsolicited proposals from solar developers. When I look at our overall budget, we think, okay, what are some areas where we could drastically do differently what we're currently doing to save money for the taxpayers? We really don't have a whole lot in our budget where we could say, well, I mean, we could do this differently, because we still need to buy food to feed the residents at both the nursing home and the jail. So barring some, crazy, supplier who comes in at half the price, we're gonna probably spend as much for food as we've always spent. And maybe a little more as costs go up. But our energy bill is one thing where maybe if we did something, we've got the land for it. How a solar project would be procured would really dictate what we would actually save or not. The power purchase agreements have some downside to them. If you get into it, they have to make this assumption where the cost of electricity is gonna go up like 3% a year. And like in 10 years, you're thinking it's 27 cents per kilowatt hour. It's like, no, that generally doesn't happen. So the savings can be a bit of a smoke and mirrors. But there's also ways to structure those so that we can buy it outright at year 6 or year 7 or year 10. And then we are the owner of all of it. So when it comes to time to dispose it or refresh the panels, that's on us. But in the meantime, we'd be getting potentially free energy. And so would that be worth looking into? I just throw that out there because other than these other things, we talk about projects and energy efficiency is kind of built into the bigger projects like the nursing home. So it isn't like we have a separate energy efficiency fund, but that's where we can try to save some money and reduce the budget for our taxpayers. But
I think it's worth looking into again because panels have just in the past few years, they've doubled in their lifespan. They're up to like 20-25 years now. We're about 10 when we looked before. So it might be worth looking into it. I think the incentives have changed too. I don't think it's so lopsided like it was before.
yeah,
We really weren't gonna gain at all. We might even lose money over, a 20-year span or 10-year span.
Well, with that, with the developer putting, investors taking tax credits, and we can take, and there, as you said, there are other ways to do that, and it wouldn't hurt to ask it. It wouldn't cost anything to ask a couple people to come in and give us a pitch.
yeah, I mean, it's $250,000 a year is our electricity budget for the county. So it's pretty small percentage wise on a $35 million budget. It's not even 1%, but if it leads to some significant savings, I think it's worth exploring. Having said that, I think there's possibly another piece to this, which would be, do we explore other energy conservation initiatives? Because any energy auditor will tell you that the cheapest or the best way to go about it is to not use energy, not to generate energy which you can use on site. That's great, but that's not as much of a return on investment as making sure that your buildings are as efficient as they can be.
That kind of,
And we haven't had the audits done lately to tell us, frankly, because we know that the nursing home thing's kind of been out there. So what's left? Well, it's the jail and it's this building and the records building. So there's not a lot to our campus once the nursing home is accounted for.
Right.
That may be another way to approach this. Let's put some money in our CIP to have some energy audits done. We might find that there are some other projects that would actually give better bang for the buck. And you can still do the generation because was it last year when the state changed its net metering cap from 1 megawatt to 5 megawatts, means that if we ever produce more energy than we can use, we'll actually get a better rate for that and be able to sell it, get more credits that we would generate. So that part of the landscape has changed. So maybe we look at doing both things.
we've already used up the free audits that the utility company does, right? We've used all that they give us. So, yeah, and I think doing both makes all kinds of sense.
Yeah, I mean, if the renovation goes through, we've taken care of that animal. And then it would just be a few buildings. I mean, the Department of Corrections can't be that outdated. It's not that old. That must be fair.
No, most of the systems are, back when that renovation and the CCC was built. And then we, over the course of time, have started to replace lighting and things like that on our own. So there's probably some savings there, but not some windfall that we don't know about.
And when you look at the records building, so on that middle section that Mary pointed out to you, I mean, heating, piping replacements and windows, and it's like, holy smokes, I think we had this conversation actually a couple years ago, we talked about it, it's like, the payback on that would be about 900 years.
Yeah.
Exaggerating, maybe only just a little bit, but,
Well, that's another thing you have to look at. There's no value in these buildings. So if you, how much do you want to put into them? And knowing you're not gonna get it back, no matter what you do. So.
Well, I think that's between for the records building, it's 175, and then by the time you looked at Ahern and the prices that we got back a couple years ago, you're putting a couple $100,000 into that building. When is it worth a couple $100,000 to begin with, let alone
Yeah, and
let alone putting that in there?
it's only worth anything to the county.
Mhm,
I mean, nobody's gonna go buy that for any other reason.
yeah,
Well,
So,
and yeah, that building, I mean, the walls are like 3 feet thick, so it's relatively, tight, except for the windows, and you
Mhm.
wouldn't say, yeah.
But I think as far as a large solar array goes, we probably need to get more information.
Yeah.
And get smarter on that, and the only way to do that is to perhaps invite some vendors, talk to, me and Mary, maybe have a couple of commissioners meeting. And then let's just find out what's out there in terms of the economics, how much have things changed, either because the technology is better, or because the net metering, drastically changed the landscape of what we might expect to achieve in terms of possibly even generating revenue, which would be pretty cool, or offsetting what we consume, on site in Unity.
I'm trying to think of a company we talked to with the, an AC meeting that does that type of thing.
yeah, we talked for
um,
a while,
Yeah, both,
and she's out of Wilmot.
yeah,
the woman, I don't know.
that might help
Oh,
us.
is that Maureen?
Sounds right, yeah, we
Yeah.
talked to them both,
She's with USource.
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah,
But I would even wonder, like, you watch the windmills, they don't turn all the time. So they're not producing power all the time, because the Eversource probably just isn't taking it in. So you gotta wonder if you're gonna try to sell some of that power back to the grid, whether they'll even take it, if it's an off cycle and they don't want it. What do you do with it? You dump it?
well,
Get rid of it somewhere.
everything you hear about windmills is, the moving parts kill you, it's.
well, I wouldn't wanna touch windmills with a,
Yeah,
for anything, it'd just be, I think solar was the best
Yes,
application
yeah.
for.
Yeah.
Cause
Anyway.
one of the other things you gotta look at when you're looking at either solar or wind power, when you get your bill, you pay so much per kilowatt hour, but you also pay so much to get it delivered to you.
and we
So
still have
when
that for electric.
when you're looking for the savings, are you paying to use them lines to put your stuff back into the grid, just like you're paying to get it from the grid into you? That cuts down a little bit of the ability to make money if you got to rent the lines like everybody else does.
Well, and the way the net metering works, the last time I spent any time looking into it is you don't get market rate for what you put back onto the grid. You get pennies on the dollar, which is still better than nothing if it's excess to what you're using behind the meter.
Yeah.
But it is better than nothing. And all that, I think all that gets worked out as part of the net metering agreement. When you do a project of any significance or size in terms of your megawatt generation or kilowatt generation, is that all gets worked out and it's pre-negotiated, so you know what you're getting from the utility company. And I think it's regardless of, whether they need the power or not, because then it goes into the nationwide distribution network, and the stuff that we generate could be getting used in somewhere
Yeah,
else.
what Commissioner Osgood was saying, so on your residential bill, half of it's transmission, you still pay that whether you,
Yeah.
even if you use zero electricity, you still pay half the bill because the lines go by your house. On the commercial bill, maybe it isn't half,
Well, wouldn't that come down if your consumption comes down? I don't think it's a
No.
fixed, is that a fixed?
I think
some of
so.
it's fixed, but some of
Yeah.
it is based on your
Yeah.
consumption.
Yeah.
It's still a pretty good chunk of the bill you pay
Yeah.
whether you use
It's
any
about
or not.
half, yeah.
Well, at my house, it's like 2/3.
Oh, is it?
Yeah, if my bill's like $100, 60 of it's the distribution.
Yeah.
And 40 of it's consumption, but I also burn a lot of candles. So,
But so that, yeah, they get you, they're getting, even if you don't use any, so, well, that's something to look at.
Okay,
Thank you.
Thanks, Mary.
Thank you, sorry for holding you.
so Mary, I guess one of the things, so we will talk about this again during budget build.
Yep.
So this was just kind of like your preview, and something to review these sheets, and we can talk about it some more. I mean, these are all notional, so these fiscal years are just kind of the starting plan. And we'll continue to refine that plan based on your input, of course, and that of the EFC or delegation, but at least it's a good starting point.
Mary, a question for when budget bills, budget is here, are the tractors doing what you need them to do?
Yeah.
And then that was-
COVID update there?
Sure.
Yeah, Ted, what do you got for us?
Afternoon. Well, I've got some really good news, I think. The last couple of weeks, certainly been testing all residents and staff. For 2 weeks, we've had no residents test positive, so actually today, we're officially cleared from our latest issues. So, which allows, we've been having visitation all along, but certainly it allows to go back to kind of communal dining, assuming we use some social distancing and appropriate, mechanisms there. So it'll open things back up again, and so we're pleased about that.
Oh, that's good news.
Oh,
We've been doing admissions. Last week, we had about 5 admissions, I believe.
Oh, fantastic.
That's great.
So, yeah, we'll continue with that.
Now, what are you hearing on the news? They were talking about 4-shot is approved for high-risk individuals, which I would think would be our residents. What are you hearing on that?
Yeah, I haven't seen that personally myself. Certainly we're talking about, now we're in the kind of phase, now that we're out of outbreak, quote unquote, is back in kind of surveillance testing, which now will only apply for those staff members who have not had a booster. In other words, not fully up to date now.
And I can't tell you which talking head it was, but it was somebody that said the CDC has already authorized the 4-shot for those at high risk.
I heard that too.
And which I would think would be our residents. but-
Just like before, when they did that for immunocompromised, yeah, we were one of the first ones recommended to do that. So,
Right.
yeah, if that comes to pass, I'm sure. that'll be good for that.
Dave, anything on your side as far as,
COVID.
Yeah.
1 inmate tested positive Saturday night,
okay,
so on the west side in the block, so
a new arrival or,
nowhere around.
okay. Staff are cleared though, right? I think we had,
Staff clear, we
Yep.
got 62 tests in this
okay,
period of time.
but still manageable and symptoms, knock on wood, have all been pretty minor across the board at both facilities, so. Excellent. Any questions?
No, it sounds good. Things are getting
All
better.
right.
I'm up.
You're up,
Okay.
Hillary.
So just to, continue to, I'll speak over there.
The owl likes it if you do.
Just to, continue on the COVID conversation, I'll lean on Ted a little bit. Part of, from an HR perspective, is really honing back in on the mandate language that was circulating, making sure HR supporting a lot of the staff processing on having a conversation with new employees who are coming in regarding our vaccine status at the nursing home. So being a requirement for staff, working with nursing to make sure that if someone new is coming in, getting ready for orientation, not vaccinated, we can provide that for them in-house once we get them on board. So facilitating a lot of those conversations. The other thing I wanted us to be able to talk about, maybe start the conversation today, maybe we finish it the next meeting or in other forums, but really thinking about some of the events we were talking about. Our service awards are still on the horizon. We hadn't fit those in the fall, winter. It didn't feel like the right time. We targeted a notion of early spring. Well, if we're going to do that, I need to get on the book that, the common man we've done in the past. We need to really think about doing that. Are we comfortable yet? That will inadvertently commingle staff that are unvaccinated with staff who are vaccinated. Are we able to do that with the nursing home mandate? Having that conversation with ourselves about some of the staff events we usually do in the springtime too. Our big barbecue we had last year, that was for everyone in the whole county to attend. So it's going to, like I said, inadvertently commingle staff who have worked in a building that's mandated with staff who maybe are not vaccinated because they're not working in an area that requires them to be.
And I'd love to find a way to get the pancake breakfast back on.
All of that. So I have it here as a question. I don't know that we'll know the answer today, but just backing out of the timeline, it takes quite a bit for HR to pull some of those things together. So I don't want us to get too close, decide, yes, we're good, and then just simply run out of time to make it happen.
Well, I think that's really gonna fall on you guys' shoulders as far
Yeah.
as what you think is safe or not. I mean, that's, you're the ones that really have to deal with it
Right,
if a bunch of people get infected.
right.
So, yeah, we'll support whatever you come up with. I will anyway, I don't know.
Thank you.
But,
Food for thought, once we get into warmer weather, we could do outdoors with a tent, you know, for the awards. You know, have somebody cater it, so Harry doesn't have to do it, but, and by all accounts, that's way safer even, you know, than indoors, so that might be something that, you know, with, for what we pay for common, you could get a
Yeah.
decent tent.
Sure.
Yeah.
So we're on the question, I just proposed a question saying we didn't really have to have an answer today. About if the mandate for the nursing home was gonna infringe on some of the bigger events we all do together. Countywide, like service awards or the barbecue. Are we in a position where we're commingling unvaccinated staff and vaccinated staff? Did that language still exist? Does the concern we had still exist about the, you know, fall, we didn't feel like service awards was the right time? Are we feeling we're getting to a place where we feel like that's better, talking about maybe outdoor events or?
Yeah.
So I just wanted to plant that seed.
How do you deal with visitation? The people have to show proof of vaccination if they come to visit.
Yeah.
So you're mingling there.
Right, the
yeah.
difference being they're all wearing
With control,
PPE, yeah.
it's control, we know who they are, we know where they're going, it's kind of a controlled access.
As far as
And,
the,
and,
go ahead. As far as the commingling, I heard an interview with the director of CMS, and they're not really into enforcement. You know, I don't think anything's gonna happen if we, you know, they're going after people that are gonna blatantly bleak with them, but they're not gonna look at, you know, if you had somebody from corrections popped in, they're not coming down on you. I mean, I'm not saying to make a habit of it, but for
right. And so that being the question, if we host something on campus that we're going to advertise, does it inadvertently say, hey, we are, you know, if they're like, hey, well, we don't know, doesn't bother us, but if we make a thing of it, does it matter? At what point does it matter? And especially if we're doing an event with food, you are expecting people to take their masks off at some point, and so the visitors are PPE'd when they come in. So we can talk more about it.
As I said,
Other,
safer to do it outdoors all the way
Right.
around.
right, it's true. So some of the other pieces and parts from an HR standpoint, wages, I've been working with the leadership team just to start kind of noodling on some figures for the budget process and kind of some philosophy standpoints we might want to take to get ready to present for the budget this coming year about staff salaries. You heard me talk about other counties who are hosting surveys. I have not seen any of those results yet. They were targeting February, so we've got a week left. So we'll see if I can get some of those results turned into us just as a participant in those. We do receive the results once they're complete. Some of my report is also, we weren't together in January, so some of these next pieces were done in January, but just a healthy reminder that that ARPA quarterly payment went out in January. Taxes are certainly all well and complete now. Everything's filed electronically at a county level to the federal government, so everything's in compliance there. Since January, we did host a job fair at the Claremont Community Center. I think it was in the newspaper, so you may have heard about it. While in-person attendance wasn't stellar, we mostly expected that. What inadvertently happened, which was kind of a nice benefit, is a bunch of electronic traffic. So we like tripled our likes on our Facebook page. I think the article really generated people being curious about our employment here. I think people really like the tagline of it being local, like love local, work local. So we saw this influx of people interested in us online. So hopefully that'll just kind of carry us forward as we continue to post things and share things and advertise. Hopefully that will have a benefit. I also heard from one of my peers in Merrimack that our article was in the Concord Monitor as well. She's like, your article in the Concord Monitor was lovely. And I'm like, I didn't talk to the Concord Monitor. So apparently it was shared.
Well, and yeah, they're looking for any kind of free content they
Yeah,
can
yeah,
get.
they got it, I guess.
The
So that's
Associated Press network is-
right.
Well, and there are a lot of paper consolidation. I mean,
Yeah.
you know, one paper was
Very
printing
well
about
could be.
4 others.
We've talked about reinstituting some radio ads, you know,
Yeah.
that theme of the local and like the we are family or whatever we call
Yeah,
it.
yeah.
It's kind of a neat, I think, marketing
Mhm.
thing that we could try to leverage. I mean, when you look at all the people that are here that are siblings
Actually,
or
family,
cousins,
yes.
I mean, it tells kind of a neat story, you know, and we've got a lot of examples of that. I think
Yep.
it would be a pretty cool campaign that we could build around. So,
Yeah, a good cluster of that family activity exists in nursing. So I had chatted with April about seeing if anyone would be comfortable or interested. We have a lot of mother-daughter duos in that group. So seeing if folks would be willing to be featured in a radio ad. We did ask folks if they'd be interested in getting their picture taken for some of our like print material, and they were fine with it, but the radio's a little different. So we'll see. April was gonna work with them to see how comfortable they are. We could write up a little script or help them. Or,
You have to be creative.
yeah.
If you don't have the funds to raise salary cap, you gotta be
Right,
creative in other ways. So
right,
that's good.
yeah. We'll
So,
see.
one question I wanted to ask the board
Yeah.
with regard to the wages.
Mm.
So, you know, we've talked about trying to gather some inputs from other counties
Mhm.
as a starting point. And absent that, we did agree that we were comfortable with Hillary leading an effort to kind of, you know, apply her experience and her art to some of the science that we might get from other counties. But if that doesn't come, we may be forced with just sort of figuring out what we think is fair and reasonable.
Yeah.
There are a million different ways we could slice that as we head into the budget. We've limited her effort right now. She's built a shell where if you just change the number, it spits out like a new grand total of what this would look like in terms of budget impact. Do you want to have a separate meeting where you, the commissioners, look at what those scenarios are and ideally provide us with where you think we need to be thinking in terms of a range of an adjustment prior to the budget build? Because what I don't want to do is have all the department heads go through plugging in salary ranges for all their staff, only to find out, oh, we got to redo it all, because that's a lot of work. Infinite Visions is not super user friendly when it comes to that.
Yeah.
So I know there will be a lot of negotiating once we get into the budget cycle with the EFC, but I don't want to lay it all on everybody all at once. I think it would be prudent to at least have round one with you to see what we built, see what we were thinking about where we think a good starting point is, knowing that, you know, there obviously would probably be some maneuvering from there, but
If you had to, if you
It
had
would be
to,
nice, it would be nice,
go ahead, Joe.
it would be nice to have a baseline. It would be nice to have a baseline. I think that's a really good suggestion.
Yeah, it is. And like if you had to categorize the most important reason why people want to work there, is it money? Or is it the location of the facility versus where they live? I'm sure that everybody has a different reason,
Right.
but what do you think falls at the top of the list?
Well, I ran the numbers a little bit ago now, but our staff we were like 78, 79%. We live in Sullivan County, we work for Sullivan County, very few people travel. That story could flip on you and say, do we pay enough for people to travel any further than that? Or is it because they want to live and work in the same place? I think that narrative could go vice versa. I think people are willing to drive further if they're making more money. So is that an indication of our wages? I don't know. I'd like to think that just anecdotally, when you talk to staff, they care a lot about where they live. I think even in our leadership, many of us have lived here. I've lived down the road my entire life. So much of what I do isn't about my salary, to be frank. It's about what I get to do here where I live. But that doesn't work for everyone. And especially in some of our union positions, the salary points we're talking about, they're low. So I have to think there's a message in there that they care about what they do. They care about being in LNA. They care about feeding residents. Much of our dietary staff have said, I could go work in any restaurant. I get to feed residents in their home here. So that narrative exists. Is it everyone's story? No, but it's a good portion of our staff story. I think that's why they stay with us. It has to be. We're not competing with the Dartmouth Hitchcocks. We're not competing with the, Upper Valley. We're not. And they could drive 40 minutes up the road and get a totally different salary point. They're not. So I think it's a mix of they care about where they live and they care about what they get to do with us. It is human centered. Yeah.
Well, I mean, since you've taken this job, you look at what you've done, or what the facility's done to try to make things better for people and recognition, all these different things that you've done. do you think any one of them has stood out more than another as far as making people feel good about working there?
I think we have an amazing leadership group that focuses a lot on talking with their staff, hearing their staff. That takes time. I think even the amount of time I spend in my day talking with people, I could get nothing else accomplished some days other than just hearing people. And I think that's really kind of emulated throughout the whole building. I get to work in, I know it's really important in Dave's building too, and even here in Newport, we have a leadership team that's listening. No idea is a bad idea. Tell us if something's going on, tell us. You know more than we do, that theory that you're willing to hear someone and that their opinion matters. I think that's pretty unanimous across the leadership group now. And I think that matters most. Barbecues are nice, the food trucks are awesome, but that's a blip on your, it's one day. And if it was your off day, you missed it. So you did. So I think it's gotta be the stuff that happens every day.
We're not doing that again.
More people that were scheduled off that day didn't get a taco.
If they get the feeling that they actually have a voice
Yeah,
and they have a little bit of ownership,
yeah.
that goes a long way.
It really does. It's your everyday stuff.
Yeah, no, that's, the communication is, I concur, that's probably the most important. Another one we need to work on is schedule, is people will drive 3 days a week, you know, an
Right.
hour where they
Sure.
don't wanna drive 5 days a week, so.
Right.
And I know I had this discussion with Ted and stuff before, you need
Yeah.
somebody to match, you know, if somebody's doing 312s, you need
Right.
somebody to match that, but.
Opposite, yeah.
But I
But
think
that's
you've
a
done a
big
lot of
plus.
that too, as
Yeah,
far as being
as
flexible.
creative as you can, yeah. Yeah, and even I can speak only for my little group, allowing folks, and my team has some people who live a little bit further now. So, you know, when we're talking about a 10-inch snowstorm on Friday, that they know, like, if you need to work from home, you need to be safe, work from home. So where we can, we do try to do that. It doesn't always work for everyone, but we try. Yeah, I think there's this feeling like you can tell us your story. I think people struggle with things. We've talked about the childcare issues before, rather than being like, I can't work here because I have childcare issues. Talk about your issue. What is it? How do we work with you? Do we need to change you to 4 days? Do you need to go per diem, premium per diem? Now we've got all these like tools in our tool belt of like full-time doesn't work with you because of all those commitments. Does per diem work for you? We've had people also switch departments. Maybe you don't want to do that work anymore, but you want to work in the kitchen. So flexibility, yeah, we have a lot of options. Even when we were doing our job fair and the few folks that came in, when they saw our list of jobs, they're like, those are very unique from each other. It's like, do you want to be a correctional officer? Do you want to work in laundry? Do you want to work in administration? Do you want to work in a kitchen? We have a lot. And that's what I had said at one point. We had enough openings to host our own job fair because we could target very different people all in-house.
Yeah.
So we were unique. Yeah.
It's still difficult though, if you try to isolate on our turnover,
Yeah.
or if you isolate just on our vacancies.
Yep.
It's really hard to then describe, okay, is this program or that program working? Because there's so many variables.
Yeah.
So yes, we think that our leadership climate is helping stabilize things, but can you say, well, how many percentage points better
Right.
is our turnover this year than last year because of that? Well, that's really, really hard, if not impossible to try to calculate. Or how much of that is due to our wage scale that we're offering? And how much better would it get? Well, that's another question that's
Right.
really, really hard. The thing that we know though, the baseline of our environment is Dartmouth's minimum wage is $17 an hour, and that's if you're sweeping floors or an LNA or whatever. Cheshire County is working their way up to $15 an hour, and those are close enough to home that we have to factor those types of things in. No matter how great our leadership climate is, no one's gonna work for probably $11 an hour if they can get 15 or
Right.
17.
Well, McDonald's is right there.
Yeah.
Right.
So those are all factors that we're trying to figure out. So what is that Goldilocks amount of money that we think we need to probably move towards to make us competitive, but also not have us be the top dollar, because we still have to be mindful of the taxpayer. But part of that is, do we have enough staff to effectively run our facilities?
Right.
Because that's important, should be important to the taxpayers too, not just, you know, the bottom line budget, but again, that's important as well. So a lot of competing things to factor in.
We've had these conversations, I know, more than once, but you know, even benefits, we've even had those conversations. Some people don't care about benefits, they want money.
Got it.
So, yeah, it's all different scenarios.
Got
So, no, I realize it's a competitive world right now. It's-
And I
So-
even know some of the narratives that exist in support of nursing is some of our new staff, even agency staff have come forward and say, we joke like, you have supplies and you have help here, and I'm not alone on a whole floor myself. And so I joked with them at morning meeting. I was like, that's what I'll put on our ad. We have supplies and we have help. But like, you just, a part of what they're experiencing is like, there are less limitation, they don't feel like you're coming in and you're wearing the same mask all week because there's no new masks coming. Take your mask off, change your mask tomorrow. So some of those small comforts matter to people. Like, yes, that other place is paying you maybe double what we are, but that was really uncomfortable to be there. And then when you come and settle with us, maybe it's not as much money, but is it more comfortable? But how you get people to understand that until you can get them to come and feel it, it's really hard. That's a hard thing for someone to feel in advance of getting there, feeling like this feels comfortable.
Well, even, I've read even these agency companies are paying more to try to get more
They're
agency
struggling.
nurses.
Yeah, they're struggling.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so it's really competitive. And the people that do want the money will go to an agency
Right,
and work because that's all they have to worry about.
right,
They can just get money.
right.
So, yeah, I can see you're competitive, what you're facing. But, I mean, I think we'll do whatever we can do. I mean, we have limitations. We know that. So,
Do you think an hour would be enough time to kind of run through?
Oh, sure.
So if we did, it'd be a non-public session because we're talking stuff that could impact collective bargaining and compensation of individuals. So I think if we could we do that maybe at 2 prior to the next commissioners meeting? Does that
Put it
work?
bold on the calendar.
Well, the long weekend killed us. We probably should have contacted everybody first thing this morning as a
Oh,
reminder, but
no.
yeah.
Okay,
But if that works, maybe that's what we could do, because I know with you staying late is probably,
that's okay. That's fine. 2 is fine. Or if you need
you gotta be here at 1 bit.
Oh,
The
no.
meeting starts at 2.
Well, I had programmed that it was today all, and I had forgotten, and when we walked in, and I saw Mary, I said, oh yeah, that's right, capital.
Oh.
We had decided to do it early.
That should be fine.
No, okay,
Okay.
An hour.
very cool. All
that's
right.
fine with me. It doesn't matter on the day of the meeting and whether it's early or not. So,
Okay.
Yeah, the other pieces on our report, just again, these were 2 months combined, so just showing you again our new hire and departure stats for what was December data and then all of January data now. So you can, I think January is maybe a good indication, a little bit in December, but maybe more so January, more new staff coming in than we had departures. What we're actually seeing more of is what we kind of call status changes. So people who maybe are having conversations about, maybe they started as per diem, but now they understand that premium per diem program. They're like, that sounds really cool.
Yeah.
And so we see this flip flop of our staff do movement internally, which isn't reflected in here, but still creates a lot of activity for scheduling and our team too. But a lot of folks who are changing, and some people are changing from full-time to premium per diem, or maybe they didn't need the benefits and they weren't accessing them, but they see their coworkers doing premium per diem. A lot of what happens and could be our biggest asset for recruiting is our own staff. So some of this like family initiative, getting folks to talk about mothers, daughters, cousins, brothers, uncles, all working together, is getting them talking about where they're working.
Yeah.
Because that's what happens is they come in as a regular per diem and they say, wait, what are you doing over there with that pay rate and paycheck? And they kind of watch each other and they understand it. They're the biggest advertisers is each other.
Yeah.
So we see a lot of movement internally, people deciding, and also sometimes change in departments. We have people gone from the kitchen to laundry or laundry to house, we have a lot of shuffling. It's good.
Yeah.
People figuring out where they want to be.
Our staff are our best recruiters.
Yeah,
That word
totally.
of mouth is so
Yeah.
compelling.
100%.
So when they hear about the good things that are going on, it's
Well,
certainly.
that's the key. Yeah.
Yeah.
If they hear about if they're part of the good things that are going on.
Right.
then-
Yeah, you got
Yeah.
it. And then just the next step, will clearly be open enrollment for benefits before we blink an eye, but, and then the budget cycle is coming, and then just thinking, I didn't want us to get too far away from if we were gonna focus on a service awards event and what that needed to look like, especially if we decide commingling our 3 locations isn't gonna feel comfortable for the mandate or any other reason. If we need to do 3 separate activities or, have something at DOC, have something in the nursing home, have something here, just leaving us time to do that. And then Monica, she attended a health trust training, but it's also just in her wheelhouse to focus a lot on wellness. She and Josh at DOC are our wellness members. And a lot of what we're seeing in the arena of wellness is mental health. I think even in terms of what we're seeing from our staff who are coming forward, that's huge
Oh,
for
yeah,
people right
especially
now.
dealing with COVID, yeah.
No, so it just, I mean, the traditional way of wellness being, how
Just
active are
smoothies and-
you? How much do you
smoothies and-
weigh? What's
yeah.
your BMI? It's just not the narrative
Yeah.
right now. It also feels like pressure, telling someone, work more, be more, do more, with less, and constraints of the world. And then also, did you lose 20 pounds? Just doesn't feel like a narrative we want to support. So I think this next phase of wellness that Monica's really diving into through these trainings is what can you do to emotionally support your staff, mentally support your staff, make sure they understand where can they get EAP. Do you have local counseling resources in your community that you can link arms with, will come on site for your staff? A lot of that activity.
Yeah.
So we'll keep you updated, but that's kind of where
Staff, you said that aromatherapy room still set up in the end of, Hummel?
I don't know if it was an activity. center, it wasn't a facility.
Somebody was big on that,
Right.
the aromatherapy a couple years ago. and,
That was before my time.
Yeah. But you joke, but I took a tour with Kim May at Cheshire at their nursing home. And when I was going on the floor, and every nursing station had a diffuser, and she's the director of HR, and she's handing out essential oils to people. And I remember following her, like, what is she doing? And she's like, oh, you get this one today, and then you had that one, and she was like handing out essential oils. I don't know that we're there yet, but part of how you make people feel warm,
Yeah.
comfortable.
Yeah.
We'll give it a go.
But yeah, the mental health, especially, like I say, especially with COVID makes all
Yeah.
kinds of
It's
sense.
hard. It's hard. People don't get to leave their stuff at the door very easily anymore, so they come to us for help.
Well, thanks for all you do.
Oh my gosh, thank you
Thank you, Lori.
guys. Of course.
You're up, Ted.
Afternoon. This is the January report for FY 22. Represents 7 months. Actually, first page really kind of shows not a bad trend at all. We came in at 123.8 average census with a budget of 136, but there's some positive dynamics.
It's the first time over 120 in a while, isn't it?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah,
If we look at Medicare, very small variance there, primarily due to average census is about what was budgeted, plus the average rate per day is higher than budgeted, $5.99. And then with some benefit also during the time frame of having the private pay really was above budget, so $29,000 positive variance there. And then if you look down at the insurance managed care, we've been talking about the additional Medicare Advantage programs, even though they're a pain in the butt to work with. It has shown that they're essentially Medicare patients with a Medicare Advantage plan. That has a positive variance too. So also good operations, about 10,000. And then looking at the Medicare Part B, they had a net of about minus 6,000, but it came out positive $3,800 for the monthly variance.
amen.
Amen.
Yeah.
Yeah, somebody newly signed up, but that Medicare Advantage is good stuff. And if you're on Medicaid, I hear it's even better.
Sure.
Medicaid, Medicare.
Right, and it's essentially no
Yeah.
copays, Medicaid picks up the rest of it. If you look at the next page, it shows the year-to-date budgeting, year-to-date kind of revenue. There again, Medicaid, kind of, we'll go down the list here. Medicaid, if you look at asterisk number 1, we've got a couple of impacts there. One being the gross payout earlier during the summer, 175. And then we had added a couple of Medicaid assessments, which should be Medicaid assessments, but next month we're transferring those to the Medicaid assessment line. And that'll, same money, I'm not taking money away, but it will be impacted in a different line. If you look at number 2 there, the Gopher Funds we had applied through in the fall, November. There's a statewide program due to Heifer Funds that was related to the nursing home, so that's a $300,000 payment in January, so that came under miscellaneous income, because it really didn't make sense to put it anywhere else. So all told, year-to-date variance is minus 171. There are a couple of payments that we came in, that were paid in February, they haven't reflected here, but we thought it was worthwhile to at least add them in there. I'll skip over the FMAP for a second, but the MQIP, that's the regular Medicaid assessment revenue, that came in. Usually we budget about around 500,000 per quarter, because that's on a quarterly basis, so we'll probably be, maybe 30,000 short for that next month. But the FMAP, or the federal matching, that money that we received, we posted to miscellaneous revenue, but we had a meeting this morning with DHHS. That money is actually due to the payment, or the enhanced Medicaid payment through the county cap, what we consider the human services budget. So 399,000, that's reflective of payment under the current law and budget that allows for, if it's more than the 50% match, then that needs to come back to the counties, because we pay essentially the 50% non-federal share for Medicaid patients. So that needs to be transferred back to, or accounted for, which we've done under Fund 10490, which is the revenue side or the adjustment side for human services budget.
So this is the 6%, right?
This is the 6.
And this is the thing that we were fighting with. What were we fighting with? Was it the feds? No, the state.
The state, because they hadn't reconciled, since we paid for it, they were keeping all of the federal match.
Yeah.
Normally it's a 50-50 under the emergency programming. It's now 56.2% from the feds.
And the intent of the feds was to provide relief to us.
Yeah.
So the benefit wasn't trickling down beyond the state. So we've been arguing, this has been like a year and a half.
Right. We were able to get
So
it
we're finally.
in here. It's finally
victory.
taken care of. Yeah.
Are they gonna backlog that?
No, it's essentially backlogged. We've got the payment for the first two quarters of the state fiscal year. We do think that, and the state thinks that the emergency funding will still go through probably the end of this fiscal year. So we do expect some payment of at least another quarter, somewhere around June. They're kind of a quarter behind, because they figure the payment based on what the payments that have been through the human services and county cap budget.
But there wasn't something for July of 20 through June of 21 for the first year of COVID, right? This was the thing that, this came in midstream.
It kicked into this fiscal year.
Yeah.
There was still some kind of dynamic relating to the previous fiscal year that didn't fully work out. So we identified it in FY21, but put it into law in FY22, and now it's finally.
So who finally got him to see the light?
Yeah.
So who got him to?
Yeah.
David Ross was really of Hillsborough County, was really instrumental in identifying that, hey, the counties are paying for this, and we're not getting the benefit of, the counties are not getting that benefit of that federal match.
Do we think some of this extra money is gonna knock down pro share still?
It will impact pro share, and that's a discussion we're kind of starting to look at. The matching under MQIP, that's what these miscellaneous bed tax, Medicare assessment payments were. We're catching up from the 6.2% matching. So we're starting to, we'll probably have a nice discussion with DHHS probably around May, when they're calculating what we think our pro share should be. I think that because, it all kind of depends on on a lot of things, but my sense is that since the federal matching has increased for MQIP and our rates have actually gone up on Medicaid, that could impact the total pro share a little bit, so
Well,
if
a
it
little
comes to
bit.
play, yeah, who knows? I don't know,
They don't
I
wanna
don't have a
lose-
sense for how much that is at this
They'll
point.
get it one way or the other.
Oh, but
Yeah.
the headline that we're gonna spend the opioid settlement money on dental? Yeah, dental for Medicaid, that's what they're looking to spend the opioid money on.
Right. So the takeaway from this, Ted, is, the $3.99, the enhanced FMAP,
Will come out of the nursing home and move into Fund 10,
okay.
so,
If we wanted to mentally sort of say, all right, well, if we're the variance right now for year to date is negative 171, but we could sort of say, well, plus the $3.99, or, I mean,
doesn't hurt, yeah.
it all goes in the
It's got
same
additional
place,
money.
right? But
Yeah,
Um,
but,
Different pots of money, because it's different.
so is that gonna be like a quarterly type thing, or is it
For the next two
for
quarters.
the next two quarters?
quarters, so.
Yeah, that's pretty good,
So we can expect somewhere around 400,000,
yeah.
per quarter,
no, about
no, that's for 6 months.
Oh,
That was a 6 month.
200,000.
So the 300,000 isn't in the 171 then, okay.
For the 300,000, the Gopher is a separate program.
Yeah,
That's ours, that's.
Yeah.
And that's factored into the 171.
Right.
Okay,
So that's helped us almost get back to even.
yeah,
yes.
And
Yeah.
4 more months at plus 3,800 and.
Might help.
Well, it certainly doesn't hurt. I mean, this is,
It's a heart attack,
this is
yeah.
great. This is the staunch the bleeding. I mean,
Yeah.
this is awesome.
but the
Yeah.
higher the census, the higher the number, typically, is that?
Yes.
Yeah.
The higher the census, the higher the pro share, the higher the MQIP,
Nice,
you know, it all impacts.
And anecdotally, we've been thinking there's a backlog out there that's gonna have to come in at some time, and maybe they're finally starting to.
Yeah,
and, you know, the home people that are taking care of these folks at home are finally going no mas.
we're seeing that, I think, you know, they're getting 5 admissions last week.
And February's numbers were pretty close to January's, right? We've been in the low 120s for the most part, right?
Yes.
So we'll be pretty darn close
So,
in
yeah,
February's report, so that's good.
through the 17th, we're at 120 with average skilled census of 16. So the part of being, we're still in the mechanism for Medicare. If a person contracts COVID, we can still,
Oh, wow.
we could still skill them for that period, if it's appropriate. So that's probably half of the February has been through those patients who were
Yeah.
that tested positive for COVID. So that won't last forever, but it doesn't hurt. the time.
Well, that's good.
So the next couple of reports are kind of standard reports, shows the length of stay. Certainly Medicare net revenue increased 59,000 over the previous month. We talked about census, kind of how that's going. Summary of admissions, 8 admissions, 7 discharges, and 74 admissions year to date with 51 discharges. So that's the show. Then if we look at the aging, came in at 2.3 million, which is an increase from last month of about 185,000. We've been working on ways to really have an impact on the aging, as we've talked about. It's higher than what we wanted to do. One kind of three phase approach that we're looking at, where you guys approved the new billing kind of mechanism, your ability that we can bill all payers through that mechanism. Laura Brookings is back with us for a couple days a week. Continue to train Melissa, but also we feel that we can get her to really, she does primarily had done the Medicaid billing, so we can use her to be able to catch up on that. And then the third approach is that it's really about kind of time, being able to commit to, or to have the time available to address some of the denials for Medicare and Medicare Advantage. Lewis found this company that specializes in collections for long-term care. And that's what we've put in your binders into the proposal for long-term care consulting. How they work is would come on board and essentially concentrate on those programs, those payments that are over 365 and less than that. Essentially, anything over 6 months payment. That represents at this point, the AR over 6 months represents for Med-Aid about 275,000 and Medicare Advantage about 156,000. So just about 430,000 is over 6 months for those two payment sources. We feel that this would allow us to, they're experts in what they do, been in business since 1982. How they work is they get a percentage of the AR collected over, if it's over 365, it's 25%, and if it's over less than 365, it's 15%. So there is quote unquote a cost, but we feel that would allow certainly for us to be able to get receivables back into a more appropriate level.
Who are they? Is it insurance companies? Like who are the people that these guys would engage with?
So they actually will work with all payer types, but what I had the discussion regarding was the Med Advantage plans and Medicare A in particular, because that's where our biggest sticking points were. But they would have access to our EMR system, work remotely. They would actually do the processing of claims, following up on denials, rejections, revamping directly with the payers themselves. So they assign a project manager to our facility, and then they work with us we identify which debts we're asking them to research. And they will reach out and learn what needs to be done and collect the funds. So they've got a lot of technical expertise, a lot of experience, and designated time to really dig into all of these individuals.
So they're working with the state insurance companies, not dunning the families for.
Right, correct.
Or is it the federal government? I mean, this is, if it's Medicare, Medicaid, all roads lead back to the feds, right?
Right.
The state manages it though.
They only
Oh,
get
okay.
paid if they collect.
Correct, right.
And do you sign a contract or do you use them
It's
see
essentially
if
an
they-
agreement.
just in agreement?
That's what we're asking authorization to do, is to sign this agreement.
Yeah, their cost or their fee structure is
Last page.
on the last page under section
Yeah, I was
E.
reading it.
So is this, you think this would be a finite duration to help us get sort of caught up?
Yes.
And then once we're caught up, the tools that we talked about before will help us maintain.
Yeah.
So say the other way around, this is we hire somebody to, for the amount of money that we pay them, but are they as good?
Yeah.
And then we pay them forever as opposed to a short burst. So if this is meant to be a short burst to help us get caught up, it's probably a pretty smart way of
Well,
doing it.
even in the long term, I mean, they're not on the health plan, they're not getting retirement benefits.
Exactly, yeah,
and all
yeah,
that
yeah.
fun
What
stuff.
attracted me to this particular consulting group is they specialize in skilled care, long-term facilities. That is very hard to find. I've been looking for resources to build my appetite with the technical side of the billing. We're reaching out to other counties, but they're all strapped for time.
Yeah.
So these guys really had the knowledge base that I was looking for. And
Speaking
where
of
it
other,
is just a percentage of what they collect.
speaking of other counties, anybody else using them? And so no testimonials as far as,
No.
okay,
Well, and, you know, I went through with both my parents trying to get the transition from Medicare to Medicaid. It was a pain, and we thought we knew it all, and with Becky's mom, we still, part of it was, we didn't know there was an issue, was the state didn't get around to saying, oh, there's an issue until 6 months later, and it was a bleeping nightmare, and Lewis was very helpful on getting it straightened out, but it's tough to deal with them.
Well, and for Medicare and Medicare Advantage, we build everything. The rejections are usually on a more technical basis, either we missed a code or some format wasn't right, or it just takes really a lot of time to, and then oftentimes, once you fix one thing, something else will pop up, you know, they don't say, these are all the issues you need to fix, and so.
Right.
Yeah, it's one at a time.
Well, and the Medicare Advantage, I think it's been around for a couple of years, but people still don't understand it. I mean,
Yeah, and then you're dealing with individual insurance companies rather than just Medicare. We bill with our, you know, Medicare intermediary, but,
I mean, I had some oral surgery and then, well, we don't take Medicare payments. It's, well, this is Advantage. It's through, they have Delta.
Yeah.
We don't do Medicare. I said, take a look at it. It's through, it's
Right.
Medicare, but it's a
That's
Delta
changing.
Dental.
Exactly.
And they're
Right.
paid for most of it. And, you know, so
Good.
here's the oral surgeon saying, oh, we don't bother with that. It's like, take a look at it.
that's right, yeah.
And that's where your check came from.
And the federal government is pushing those. We're seeing a lot more Medicare Advantage advertising, certainly.
all the
We're gonna
time.
continue to see that.
Yeah.
Which for us adds a level of complexity in individual insurance companies, you know, maybe Anthem, United Healthcare.
And what they've done is basically privatize Medicare and
Yeah.
didn't tell the Democrats.
That's what.
I just should
Yeah.
get better actors to try to sell that
I
program.
seriously asked an agent, I said, so how do these folks make money? And they are, my Medicare premium is going to the third-party insurer and they're handling the benefits
Mhm.
for less money than the government did for my folks. You know,
What's your view on that, Joe?
I've been talking with my insurance, provider and, I mean, I'm okay with, especially with collections, to get most of the money back is a good thing. But I'm still out to the jury with this Medicaid Advantage and making your Medicare payments go toward the Advantage plan. There's disadvantages there as well as advantages.
And it's really, as you know, it's up to the individual or family member, whether or not they want
Yeah.
to
Yeah.
take Advantage plan, so.
are there any other players in this space? Is this the only game in town?
This was the only one that I found that specialized in the skilled facility.
Okay. Just wondered if we needed to try to compete it, because like with realtors, sometimes you can get weasel away a few percentage points on their cut.
no,
This is probably a pretty limited niche market.
I had one long conversation with a gentleman from the consulting group, and he educated me on what they offered. The other thing that they're going to do for us during this process is lend some training along the way. So to speak back to your point, this is kind of a get caught up interim step. But in the long term, we'll get an education on some of the main themes of what held those up and what it took to get them paid. So that maintaining on a regular basis moving forward, we have that extra knowledge under our belt to work with. So.
On average, how much are we not getting paid per year? I mean, how much we lose? Money, you have an average?
Well, so if I kind of my reference, or at least within the profession, an ideal would be 30 to 45 days in AR, as it's called, essentially. And so you figure, you know, if our budget's 13 million, so we're looking at, you know, 1.1 or so revenue a month. that's where I like to see AR. And we've done that before, about 1.1, 1.2. And so, this, right now, we're, 2.2.
Well, this
So,
is different than a bad debt write-off. So it's not that we're not gonna get it, it's just that we're not getting it quickly enough, and so it's out there and,
Yeah,
yeah.
and
it's out there and we need it.
We, yeah, we wanna get it.
Well, and the longer it's out there, the less chance the bigger chance you have of not getting it.
right, exactly.
Yeah.
We want to be able to.
And you think this outfit will change that?
Yeah, I think they'll do three things for us. I think they will help us get caught up on some payments that are stuck right now, that they have the knowledge and time to move forward, which is an immediate gain. The second one is they'll be able to identify any of the collections that really are a dead end right now. We'll feel more comfortable, unfortunately, looking at those and understanding that they might be something we need to consider for a write-off. But we'll have the knowledge of distinguishing between those two characterizations. And then the third piece, like I said, is that bit of training along the way to be able to deal with, in particular, the Medicare waiver type problems and the Advantage plan issues. Going back to some of the intricacies of the Advantage plans, not only, I like your analogy of being privatized, because that's really kind of what it is. They do not always adhere 100% to Medicare standards. So for example, they may have a diagnosis code that they don't accept, but the rest of the Medicare world does. The experience these guys have, they'll know those details for these different payers and know how to handle those wrinkles, which could take normal flow. Try one thing, wait 14 days to get a response, try another thing, wait 14 days to get a response out of the mix. So.
Commissioner Hubert asked how long, is there a contract duration? Do we sign, or is it month to month? So I mean, we can try it, and if we like it, great. If we don't like it, we say no
Right.
more. Yeah.
To keep us fully informed as to what they're doing, and they work collaboratively with the business
And if
office.
it does what we want to do and
Yeah.
it keeps us in line, then great. But if it doesn't,
No harm, no,
we don't
just-
gain anything.
Yeah, we can just say, thank you, no more. Do we need a motion or?
Wouldn't hurt to upfront.
I would move we authorize the nursing home minister to enter into a agreement with service for a LTC consulting for billing Medicare collections.
I'd second that.
All in favor?
Ben Nelson.
George Hebert?
Aye, Joe Osgood.
All right.
We'll report back as to how it's working after.
Thank you,
Be
Commissioner.
curious,
Good
yeah.
stuff.
Thank you very much.
Appreciate it.
Thanks for that.
Thank you.
You're not gonna kick Laura to the curb now, are you?
No, actually, she's gonna spend some
All
of her
right.
per diem time gathering information for these guys.
What is she charging?
I'm gonna work tonight.
Yeah, I didn't see that in there.
You need to step up again, Mary, or you
Oh,
all
I'm
set?
on the hot seat again? Yeah, so I have a
You should let Dave go ahead of you. But he's been
I
sitting
have
there patient.
a brief report, because I just gave January's report at last meeting, so, the first item is, after 2 rounds of interviews, we've selected a candidate to fill the Assistant Director of Facilities position, and we are super excited about him. He's currently completing his pre-employment process, which we don't anticipate any snags in, and he will be starting on February 28th. So we are super excited about that. So we will bring him to a future meeting to introduce him.
Good.
Where'd you find this person?
What's that?
Where'd you find this person?
Indeed. Yep.
Indeed? Oh, good.
I was gonna say, local or?
Concord, but originally from this area. So, maybe something that he looks at moving forward, coming back closer to home, Goshen. So,
Cool.
Could be my neighbor.
well, we're close enough now. Yeah, right. So his name is Matthew Bover, and he grew up in Goshen. He's currently finishing up at the city of Concord. He's got 10+ years of supervisory experience, mostly in environmental services. And he's just finishing up associate's degree in facilities management. So
Cool.
he brings a lot of supervisory experience in a facility sort of way, not necessarily facilities maintenance, but has the right attitude and the right background, I think, to step right in and pick up what he needs to know and leverage the knowledge and experience that our staff has, to hold them accountable for the roles that they play as well too. So we are really excited. He flew through 2 different days of interviews, with a lot of positive feedback. We had no less than 8 staff members participate in the interview process, which was really good too. So
He missed the coast. He wants to get back near the ocean.
There you go.
So yeah, so he'll be starting on Monday, and we'll bring him to a future meeting to introduce him. So I'm excited to have him on
I
board.
wonder if
so.
he has a view of the Goshen Ocean.
What's that?
I wonder if he has a view of the Goshen Ocean.
So some other highlights that have happened over the course of February. So the generator for one of the generators for corrections, on a recent power outage, we could not keep the generator running. The further investigation that we had determined that there was an issue that had been previously identified this fall during a preventive maintenance service, that there were cooling system issues, and at that time we understood it would only have an impact if the generator needed to run for an extended amount of time, like days on end. And so we learned in this outage that wasn't necessarily the case. It was more impactful. So we got through that outage with the help of our staff and Power's generator, but we had to move up those repairs higher on the priority list, and we've authorized that work to be completed. We also have identified 2 major electronic valves in the nursing home that had been previously installed incorrectly, and they, without getting into the nitty-gritty of this is an issue that they had been installed improperly a number of years ago, and workarounds had been installed and managed over the course of the last several years to address the symptoms, but not necessarily figure out what the cause of the problems were. So we had Johnson Controls. From our perspective, we thought it was a control side of thing. They came in and helped us work through and trace back actually what the issues are. And so we're taking a look at replacing these 2 valves, which will be, each valve is about $6,000 to $8,000. So we got to take a look at this, determine when exactly it needs to be done. We are able to manage it manually right now, so the nursing home isn't seeing an impact from it. So we just need to take a look at what the future looks like moving forward with these. And if it's something that we want to do right away or continue to manage manually. So I'll have some more information on that.
These were installed when the biomass was put in?
Shortly after that, there was some controls work that was done after the biomass. And there was also some repair work that was done several years ago that these were installed in. And I know from my experience over the last few years, we have been having problems with actuators in the boiler room. And so what I've learned through this sort of tracing this out with Johnson's is the actuator problems that we were having, which also were not insignificant to fix, were actually contributed by the problem that these 2 valves were installed incorrectly.
And they're in the underground?
They're in the
piping?
boiler room.
They're in the boiler room?
Boiler room. Yep.
Okay.
So, yeah, so without
Does the
getting
installer, does the installer have any responsibility to this thing? if they're installed improperly, that's not a warranty issue. That's more of inappropriate work in my eyes.
Yeah, I guess to go into any further detail, I probably would want to go into a non-public session,
Okay,
discuss it further.
okay.
So we can decide on that later.
Okay.
So Sullivan House, I know we'll give an update on that, but I just want to mention that we have all of the furniture has been delivered in, this is installed in Unity. It should be stored in Unity, but.
Oh, that answers one of my questions. That answers one of my questions.
I was
Okay, thank
assuming
you.
assemble, but.
You can come see my new office. So we do have a good amount stored in Ahern, in Unity. However, we did have the bedroom, dining, and lounge furniture delivered right to the facility because it was part of the contract to have the furniture maker deliver it to each floor. And that was a service we paid for, so we pushed on Blank and Bailey a little bit and let them know that it was coming, whether they were ready or not. It was, we were there earlier today for the job site meeting. It was good to see furniture in there, and it is all protected and everything. So there's no chance of damage to it, but all the furniture is pretty much on site or in Unity. We've been chasing recently some roof leaks here in Woodhill, just trying to make it through the winter to spring. I have a call out to the company that we engaged with for the roof replacement to see where we are on their schedule and just get a better update on that. But we're just trying to chase it through and nurse it through the winter.
Melanson doing that?
No, it's a company out of Manchester.
Yeah, somebody knew, I forget who it
Yeah,
was, but yeah.
I can't remember it off the top of my head. Yeah, it's someone we haven't worked with before. And so
We're
that.
talking about solar and roofs, and what I'm hearing is everybody wants to put solar on the roofs, but that's one more pain in the ass on the roof to deal with.
Yep.
So,
Yep. I completed some training related to underground storage tanks, recertified to have some coverage in that with our staff changes to make sure that we were covered with DES for the operation of our underground storage tanks in Unity. And then another webinar. So one last thing that I have that isn't on the report, I wanted to check in. We had signed for the biomass wood chips. We had signed a 2-year agreement with a 3rd-year option. And so we would need to notify Cousineau's if we want to take that option.
Jeez.
Or if we wanted to rebid. So the option was at the same price, which was $50 per ton. And so I just wanted to get a little bit of a litmus from
Any
the,
idea what the going rate is?
I don't know what the going rate is. Durgan and Kroll has expressed interest in bidding again. So there is some interest in competitiveness. I know fuel is not at a really great price now for bids, and fuel drives a large portion of the cost of our
I was
chips.
gonna say with the price of fuel and labor, and I doubt they're gonna be any cheaper.
Yeah.
President Kroll has hardwood chips?
Yeah, so we use a mix of, but yeah, so if you remember before this contract, we used them for a year.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, and then they did not want to renew, and they've recently reached out again. To say that they would express, they have interest if we go back out to bid or not, but we do have the 3rd-year option with Cousineau's. We have had some issues with them meeting spec, and we need to stay on them pretty hard sometimes. That has gotten better recently, but we went through some tough times last summer with dust and debris.
I was gonna say,
in
it's
the
more the
chips.
size of the chip, or the size and the shape of the chip than hardware or software.
Yeah, and so what we had found, they were doing, they must have been doing something in their yard, because we were getting a lot of debris, like rocks and things like that. And so they had said that they had changed their process a bit. It has been better since. But I just wanted to get a litmus of what the board was thinking as far as just staying with Cousinos for a year, see what fuel prices do, or put it back out on the street.
Wouldn't hurt to put it back out. I mean, they gave us a pretty good price, but
Yeah, we might come back at
I
60.
was gonna say,
Yeah,
they go.
it's,
they could go up.
yeah, yeah, we're locked in, we would be locked in for $50 a ton is what the current
I
price
mean-
is.
How long have we been at $50 a ton right now?
We've actually been at $50 a ton for the past 3 years.
So the way energy costs have gone up, $50 a ton is fairly attractive right now. As long as they can keep within our specs, I'm thinking that if you go out to bid, you could end up higher than that.
Yeah, and the biggest cost in these ships, from my understanding, is the trucking.
It's the trucking.
You know, and the cost of trucking is through the roof, so my guess is it would be. I would, till they're gonna call, love to in a year.
Mhm.
We kind of thought wood pellets was gonna drive the price up, but it really hasn't done.
No, it
much.
hasn't. There really hasn't been much of a change. I think when I started here, over 4 years ago, we were at 46.
Yeah.
And so it went 46, 47, 48, and then we've been at 50.
Yeah.
But fuel prices and labor were relatively stable until,
How many tons we burn? 30,000?
No, about 3,000.
3,000, not, okay,
Yeah.
round zero, to one too many zeros.
Yeah.
So it's 150.
Is the moisture content part of the spec?
Yes, it is.
Yeah,
Yeah, because if you get a heavy moisture content, they're selling you water instead of wood chips. That's the only thing you gotta watch out for.
oh yeah, and you're using BTUs to evaporate the water.
yeah.
So
That's right, yeah.
Lionel, have you heard anything in your forestry circles as what pricing is doing?
No, but, I was gonna mention this in my report, we may get some chips off of our own timber sale. It's something we're looking at right now, they're just wrapping it up over there and they've got a whole bunch. They ran the specs by the operator that they're using to clean it up, these are the tops that are sitting there that are gonna get chipped up anyway, and so it'd be a nice thing, it's not gonna solve this whole issue, it'd just be a kind of a nice press release to say that we're actually burning some of our own.
Yeah, that
Would,
would be nice. Well, otherwise they haul them away and pay us $1 a ton or something.
Yeah, I mean, the
right?
market's been really, really terrible
Yeah.
for a long time, and
Yeah.
it still is, and so the whole issue with biomass is that it's not good economics. The logging industry is having a hard time breaking even.
Yeah, I mean, the landowner doesn't get anything, it's all the trucking part of it.
And sometimes truckers are actually spending their own money to stay in the truck, to drop stuff off. They're actually doing it at a losing proposition because they don't want to lose their position if things turn back
Yeah, yeah,
around again. So it's pretty desperate.
There's some of the places, yeah, have quotas, you can do 3 loads a week and yeah, if you don't take them. So my inclination would be to do the option.
Mhm. Okay, well, I will reach out to Cousinos. I'll talk a little bit just about the spec and some of the issues we've had over the last year and get a sense from them. And we'll,
And checking with them that it's not gonna, I think we've got enough of a history, so if we end up with 3 or 4 loads of rural, it's not gonna
Yeah.
screw things up.
yeah, no, Lionel and I have been talking about that, and there's actually nothing in the contract that precludes something like that, so I think we would be fine. Okay, great, thank you.
Thanks, Barry.
Yeah, Dave.
Yeah, I would think they'd love trucking them up the road rather than trucking them to wherever they're going to.
Yeah,
Yeah.
could be nice.
How you doing, Dave?
Today's in-house population was 47. A lot going on at DOC now in terms of policy issues. We are still working on the tablet policy. It's been written for a while. But we're still having issues with Securus and some of the like software concerns with it. We're also testing the officer tablet that came with the service, so we're doing our own counts now on a tablet. So we'll see how that goes, and we'll make a decision for next month, whether we write that into the policy and submit it or not.
But they actually do have the tablets, so, right?
We do have them and they're working pretty well. It's just
Yeah,
a
I
lot of
remember you
glitches.
saying the noise had gone down.
Oh, yeah. So being in charge. Um,
Bad thing for the kids to be on 24/7, but not a bad thing.
right. In terms of resolutions, we did have new red hawk equipment installed. It's surprisingly, it's not working 100%. But
Well, I find that out of it.
yeah. Infrastructure, again, we're gonna, hopefully in the spring, I think Mary and her team will develop a timetable. We can start doing some duct work, cleaning in the DOC. We did get one quote for the AC unit in the electrical room located in the DOC basement. That's where our software, some of our wiring is, and gotta keep that area cool. Under major disciplines, we had 10 majors, 11 minors, nothing that's gonna require an investigation. As far as staffing, we brought one new officer on board on Friday, and then Saturday night, we had one leave mid-shift at 7 PM, so we bring one on, we lose one. That's what we do, we're always breaking even. We're still doing interviews, physical assessments. We've limited applications and resumes. HR is doing a good job advertising for us, just not getting people coming in the building. 3 of our nurses resigned within the last month. We were able to fill 2 of the positions. We have one more interview coming in Thursday. I believe we'll bring that person on board.
Do you have any luck with the agency?
Prime care, no luck,
No luck.
no luck. I've left voice messages with Prime care 25 times since January 24th.
So what are your assumptions on for budget? I mean, I know the number may not change a whole lot whether or not we use them or not, but certainly the execution.
Yeah, I need them to reach out. I mean, part of the problem is we're Sullivan County, we're so small, we are at the tail end of their list. They care, but not that much. So,
Is that their motto?
well, they're in.
Well, that's not that model.
It should be their motto. They've been in Rockingham working successfully for quite a while, but they just recently went into Belknap, Carroll. They are currently going into Merrimack, and they have Hillsborough on deck, so Sullivan County is, I mean, we're 47 inmates. I mean, we're not the big billing item for them, but we had communications. We had great communications in November, December, January. We had a meeting set up in January. They called, no show for the meeting, and now they want all answer the phone. So that's.
The only 3 that left were for other nursing positions and stuff, nothing, not because they didn't like you.
No, no, 2 of them, quite frankly, because the schedule is the schedule. We're taking back a little bit of control of our schedule on nursing. Our nurses have a tendency to come in, trying to make the schedule that fits for them, and that just doesn't fly. We have 3 people competing against each other all the time. Our medical services coordinator, who's an outstanding nurse, did not like the management part of her role, so she is remaining on to provide mental health services, but she doesn't want to be a medical services coordinator.
They all wanted to work 9 to 5 or something.
They all want to work when they want to work. Let's call it how it is.
And the demand is out there, so they can probably find it somewhere.
Again, in terms of numbers, the DOC, our flex numbers aren't good. We have 4 males and 1 female. So again, in a perfect world, we have 11 people that are eligible to work on campus. We have 5. The male treatment number reflects 6, but we've had, this report was generated on Thursday. We've got 3 more admissions into treatment. So we have 9 males and 2 females in treatment, which is excellent. I'm very happy with that. I wish we had a few more females, but again, You know, last year at this time I was reporting we had two, so the numbers are looking good.
Is Rockingham still sending females or no, where's that?
Not sending anyone,
That's since COVID, right?
not since COVID.
And they're getting their own program. That's
Well,
part of
they-
the project that they wanna,
Yeah, they're working
2
on,
years down the road, but.
yeah, they're working on starting their own program.
I wonder if it's, well, I was gonna say, I wonder if it's worth asking, now that COVID is lightening up, but it's not,
I asked
probably
him,
not lightening up that
I
much.
ask him every single
Okay.
month if he's going meeting, so. I'm not, I beg for, inmates and treatment, I beg for inmates and labor, so. Just, there's, you know, every facility is currently short staffed and, short in terms of their inmate population numbers.
Yes.
In terms of infrastructure and maintenance issues, Johnson Controls came in to deal with some problems with the HVAC. They'll be coming back, do some follow-up work on that problem. The Western Services was in to work on the boiler room. Tank control problem. In terms of nightly cleaning details or painting, currently painting the female CCC doors. Public events meetings. Again, we meet weekly with over Sullivan House. Mary covered that already. We do have a transformer now, so we can maybe make some progress in terms of getting systems online. I attended the superintendent meeting as well as certification board. Department head meeting. I did some apples and vine steering committees because we're working with the Attorney General's office to define what is going. 30th when I no longer running it. I did present last week to the New Hampshire College and University Consortium, and Vine is going into all of the colleges and universities, including community college system of New Hampshire. We have one male complete trails. We just completed a round of cooking manners, and we are starting a round with the New Hampshire Humanities, starting in March. Also in March, I'll be coming to discuss what we're potentially going to do with RSAT, because March is our RSAT. We start working like grant for submission to the fall. They are going to allow reentry dollars, need some incarceration going into reentry and sober housing, so that's probably going to be a topic this year. Officer Spooner has finished his assigned training. He's been assigned back on second shift. Officer Tanksley has just started with Sergeant Effley. Estine is currently in the FTO program. Medical issues, not much going on. We had 2 orthopedics, some phlebotomy testing. We've had 12 rapid tests and 62 PCR tests conducted in this period. Any questions?
Me,
I'm all set.
Thank you.
thanks, thanks,
Thanks,
Dave.
Dave.
Oh, you're on.
Thanks. So this is just my regular report. I'll start with the Conservation District. So the plant sale is ongoing. This is the first year that we've done electronic credit card payment. We finally joined the 21st century and it's going great.
Oh, that's
It's
good.
just going great.
Yeah.
So we've got a nice system going where we're a lot of
Are you
the,
using the Square on your cell phone?
I'm not, I don't have a cell phone.
I knew that right away. That's why I was asking, like, 20 of the 21st century.
The department, I'm not. Yeah, so it's going well. The deadline is March 2nd. And fruit trees are selling out. So if anyone's interested in fruit trees, better get going. So the deadline is a week from tomorrow for the plant
Are
sale.
there some of the brochures out front?
Yeah,
or-
we've
oh,
got
God,
some
oh, yeah,
out there.
okay.
We're still doing it the old way as well, but
Yeah,
um,
hey, I'm not teasing you, I just got rid of my flip phone. So.
So the other thing about the Conservation District is that we really want to turn our attention back to Claremont. We used to be in Claremont. We were in Claremont from 1946 to 1994. And then we came over here, and then we went over to Unity for our meetings, starting in 2013. That's when we were in Unity. And we've been thinking that we're probably better off if we go back to Claremont. So we're looking at different spaces for that. The makerspace might be a possibility, or the rec center, the library. There's a few different options.
Sullivan House, opening soon,
Oh, does that have a public space?
yes.
Oh, wow, that could be perfect, actually.
How big do you need?
Not big at all. Less than 10 for sure. Usually it's like 5.
Well,
You have room?
Yeah, as long as you're not bringing like critters in there.
Or contraband, yeah. No critters.
Well, that, yeah, they,
No owl workshops.
well, they used to meet with the FSA offices, and then when they split, that space went away. You know, when
NRCS. you mean?
yeah, NRCS
Right.
and FSA
Yeah.
were in Claremont, and then when they went to,
That's
you know, Sullivan and Cheshire, they moved from Mulberry Street to where they are in
To the
Walpole.
records building, yeah. Right,
Well,
right. The NRCS did. That's right.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
that's where they used to meet, was there.
That's
So when
right.
that went away, that's when, oh, now I can't think of her name, moved over here.
Jan Hayes.
You know,
Yeah.
so she was in an office on
On Mulberry
Mulberry
Street.
Street, yeah.
That's right.
So that's what
Yeah,
kicked them out of
Yeah.
kicked them out of Claremont, was when the feds combined.
yep. So along
But
with
no,
that,
that's one thing we've talked about, is that being public space. I didn't wanna,
great. Well, that's exciting. I mean, I think that'd be great. It's a good location. So a couple things that we're also doing in Claremont right now is we're rolling out a street tree pilot project for Myrtle Street. We're gonna buy some trees and find homeowners that would like to have an additional tree to try to increase the shade tree factor along Myrtle Street. Beautification calms people down, cools things down. There are a lot of reasons to do shade trees. We've talked to Nancy Merrill and the city. We're gonna work more closely and more specifically with the DPW, but we're staying out of public land. This is all gonna be on private land. So as long as we're not, you know,
so what,
getting tangled up in overhead
Yeah.
power lines or anything, we should be okay.
you said Myrtle Street, why Myrtle Street?
Well, the idea for it came from Jonathan Nelson, and he's been working on renovating a building there. And he showed me some photographs of Myrtle Street 100 years ago, absolutely beautiful with, you know, shade trees the whole way.
I know a landowner I can put you in touch with if you're looking for him.
On Myrtle Street?
Yeah.
Oh, great. Yeah, that'd be terrific. So that's one thing we're doing. Another thing is, I've been partnering with, the working title right now is the Claremont Growers Collective. It's an initiative that Winter Street CSA started up with a bunch of other folks that are interested in strengthening the local food availability, creating more of a network for Claremont. Claremont kind of gets missed, either coming east from Vermont or coming south from Vital Communities or coming north from Cheshire County. Claremont's just kind of been missed a lot. And so they've got great energy, and we're working hard. We've developed a strategic plan and some first year goals. And I think it's going to be great. It's going to be awesome for Claremont, and there'll be a lot of other benefits as well, I think. And then the third thing that we're working on right now is we've got a partnership with the Abnaki tribe. It's our local Abnaki tribe. They were given 11 acres of land in Claremont, and their long-term goal is to develop that into a welcoming center, which would be excellent for Claremont's visibility and destination value and stuff like that. So we've just been trying to get them, helping them with their driveway over the winter, but there are a lot of other things coming, and opportunities to partner on workshops and that kind of thing.
Where's their land in Claremont?
It's just past the hospital on Elm Street on the left-hand side.
Mhm.
Yeah. So that's the district side. Now I'm going to go to natural resources. The Little Sugar River timber sale. We had budgeted $18,000 of revenue. We've brought in $67,000 in revenue. So almost 4 times what we budgeted. And, you know, we had to be conservative with the budgeting because you never want to let people down. But this has just been great. And I think it's testament to how good Meadows End is as a management company. Utilization is everything. If you buck the logs the right way, you can maximize value, and it all adds up. And then suddenly you've got a really nice stream of revenue.
Did they take mostly home? Was it?
Yeah,
oak?
this was an oak sale.
Yeah.
And oak was good. Like the market's been real good
Yeah,
for
it's really good now.
oak. So
Will we know this spring how your squirrel planting
Oh, that's right.
last fall worked out? Will they start to shoot up?
they should, yeah. And they're white oaks, so they're gonna have completely different
Yeah.
leaves. And I'm doing a little experiment. I planted about 200 acorns all along the road. But I'm also gonna plant 100 seedlings in another spot
See how-
and just see how they fare compared to each other. Because I think bringing white oak onto our land is just a win-win.
Oh,
It's,
yeah.
it's edible for us.
Yeah.
And it's great for wildlife, you know, and I think it used to be there.
It has more value as far as timber goes.
Right, the timber's off because the tyloses are filled, so you can use them for barrels. They used to float them down the river.
Yeah.
So that's good news. And I just wanted to mention with regards to the solar idea on the complex, that there are siting specifications for solar arrays. I worked on one for where I live in Putney, and one of the biggest siting specs is to try not to destroy or ruin good agricultural land. So I personally, I am very sensitive to climate change, and I realize what's happening, and I think we do want to go to solar. I think we have to as soon as possible. But if it's at the expense of agricultural land, I think we have to be careful and thoughtful about that. And so some solar arrays are heavy to the cement. Some solar arrays actually come in and scrub all the topsoil off before they'll even start. And that just eliminates it for agriculture. So it's just something to think about. And the other thing that we have to be aware of is the land leases. We have, those lands are leased until 2026. I've recently been in conversation with NRCS because Bruce Furlan had some fencing put up on some of that land, permanent fencing. And NRCS didn't really talk to us about this, but it turns out that they have an expectation, I believe, of 10 years that the fencing will remain. And we're getting clear on that because obviously I never intended to create any obligations to the county beyond the lease periods. And so I've made it clear to NRCS that we cannot do business like that. That we're working on 5-year leases with our lessees, and that any infrastructure that we might do or expectations of maintenance that they might have on the producers can't exceed our lease periods. So
Well, if that print was so fine that it was non-existent, that's, you know, it kind of goes beyond what's in the fine print, as the saying goes. So,
right.
I mean, if it was something that we weren't even aware about till after it happened, that's kind of a foul.
Yeah.
But,
And
anyway.
I think we're fine.
Yeah,
on
we'll
what
factor
we
all that
have.
in as
Well,
far as the
just-
solar thing goes.
yeah.
Yes, we certainly understand it.
Just wanted to-
It was probably a communication thing, this is probably, they told Bruce and Bruce didn't relay it on.
Well, it was a different DC at the time too. Yeah, it's all good. I'm not worried about what we have right now. I'm just saying as we go forward, if we're leasing our lands, maybe I need to change the language of the leases, at least on areas that we think we might be developing so that we don't get pinched. We don't want to get caught in that. So I'll make sure we don't. The root cellar is clean. It's not, Mary should have announced it because it was thanks to her, but we are no longer with asbestos. We've got clean bill of health. We can start putting the stuff in there. I'm very excited.
Nice.
And we've got a road that you can get
We've
to
got a
and from
road,
this spring.
And we are all set. We just can't wait.
We'll know for sure in April, that's a wet spot.
Yeah.
The community garden, the high tunnels, you know, we've got those 2 high tunnels. One of them we were sharing with DOC for growing stuff for the inmate garden. They don't need that for this year. And so what we're planning to do is have one of them used by a family that lives just down the road. They're going to be looking at growing native species of plants from locally sourced seed, which is actually a very important thing to do because people know about the importance of native, but if you're bringing in a native sugar maple that actually grew up in Arizona, the genetics are terrible. And so that pollen goes out, it crosses with our truly native stuff, which has been here for 8 to 10,000 years and completely pollutes the genome going forward. So anyway, one of the high tunnels is going to be doing that this year. The other high tunnel, I had a great conversation with someone I think you know, John Hall of Claremont.
Yeah.
He's with the Heart of Claremont. And he's been donating his time for years for the city to plant the square there with all those flowers. So he was wondering if he could maybe use one of the high tunnels to grow coleus and some other things for that purpose. So we're going to bring him in and work with him on that. So I'm really excited about these two new energies that are coming into our high tunnels.
John's fantastic.
What's his building status for the garden, your shed? Is that there? Is that?
It's there. It's
Oh.
fantastic. Yeah. Next time you're in Unity,
What's the trouble?
take a look.
Maybe sometime we can get back to Unity.
It's a great little building.
All right, so it's there and set up and ready to
It's
go.
set up. I've got a
Cool.
camera on it. And so 3 a.m, boom, here comes a photo of 2 deer standing in front of it, or a fox running by.
Now, is that going to
That's
Dave
cool.
too? The feed for that?
No, it's not yet. I still need to work on, I'd like to get video too. I just have still photos. And if I walk around there, I'll get one shot of me. I won't get 5 or 6. So I think if I had videos, it'd be better.
But I mean, it would make sense to have it going with somebody that's there 24/7.
It would,
Then you looking at it the next day.
it would. I just don't know if you can have it go to multiple people or not. Just haven't gotten that far. But I will.
Then again, it would probably make more sense to go there and you can go down and look at the pictures rather than having it come
Right.
to you the next, I mean, because if you get it the next day, it doesn't do as much good as, you know,
Right.
if it was somebody
Right.
that was full-time. I'm just thinking out loud.
Yep. Hopefully we won't have more issues, but
It happened once.
we can't take our chances with that. And then the Sullivan House landscaping is something that I'm gonna help take care of. I'll run by my ideas with Dave and test the soil, see what we've got. We might look at some terracing in order to create that landscape because it's quite a steep bank right now. But I'm looking forward to that. That'll probably happen around May, I would say. And also, I recognize that the Newport buildings could use some love. They don't look that great coming in here.
Especially with extension being remote.
Yeah, the records building, that crabapple may be dead, I'm not sure, but I'll try to figure something out
We
for that.
should be able to have, by May, you should have some volunteer help at Sullivan House.
Great.
Actually, if we could have the landscaping done before May, because that's probably when we'll do the dedication, that'd be awesome, but we can talk later.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Do you have a
no.
date or
No.
not yet? Okay.
Go to
yeah.
Hobby Lobby and get all the flowers.
We'll talk, and Dave can talk offline. Yeah.
And then just last thing is school to farm day. We had to put that on hold for the past 2 years because of COVID. We're going for it this year.
Cool.
So the date on that is May 23rd with a rain date of May 24th. If there's anything happening with the building project, probably not.
Not by then.
No,
Okay, then we'll probably utilize the full complex like we have before, like we'll have the gazebo. We never had the gazebo before.
23rd.
23rd of May and the rain date is the next day, 24th. So I think we've already got 10 schools signed up, so it could be a really awesome thing. And that's all I have.
Send a reminder to me send me a text or an
On
or
that
an
date.
email.
Okay,
Yeah.
great. Yeah, I'd love to have you there if you guys would welcome everybody in the morning.
Yeah.
That counts for a lot.
Well, they must be jonesing to get out too, I think.
Oh, yeah. Thank you.
There.
all right. I think this might be a week where my report's the shortest one of all. We didn't prearrange that either for them to go along to make me look good, but, all right, so the shout out, wanted to recognize, Deb Belanger, she's our head of dietary. Just recently, I mean, she's been awesome, so we made two main hires during COVID that were really critical. One of them was Lewis, and the other one was Deb, and we were, that was a really difficult time to think that we were gonna find and acquire really talented people, but Deb's been awesome. Well, Lewis has too, but this is not. But, dietary it's always a challenge just with the staffing. And that was, prior to Deb, but it's been even more difficult through COVID, trying to, excuse me, keep a full team in the kitchen. It's such an important mission, so it's a no-fail mission, but it's really hard to do when they've had times where she's been basically rolling up her sleeves and being a line cook basically to help out. But great demeanor. She really fits right in with the rest of the leadership team. She's completely a team player. Just wonderful in so many respects. But also ability to kind of think on her feet, play heads up ball. We had some kitchen utensils and supplies that were excess to need. And working with Mary, working with Dave, we're gonna use those at the Sullivan house. So it's cups and plates and other things like that we are not able to use in the nursing home anymore. So it's like, well, what do you do with them? You chuck them out in the dumpster or find another use? So just again, that awareness to say, well, wait a minute, maybe we can use this for something else. Little things like that, I think, are just pretty spectacular. So I just wanted to give Deb a shout out for that in particular, but as well as the overall excellence that she has demonstrated for the time that she's been with us.
And more like home if they mix and match.
Yeah. On the renovation project update, so we did have, I think, a pretty productive meeting yesterday with the working group, as well as the executive finance committee. It was a combo meeting. Ted and I were here, Commissioner Hebert, obviously as a member of the working group. So, I don't know, the big takeaways I'd say are really looking to make some tweaks to the draft resolution. Just concern about making sure that it's not open-ended and doesn't send the wrong message, I guess. So I do have a phone call tomorrow morning with our bond counsel, and I will share those concerns with her and make sure that we get a product that everybody's happy with. We talked about the timeline. We talked about whether we would go for something through the bond bank that's bundled or not bundled, as we've discussed, and we want to retain flexibility. So a lot of good issues that were, I think, rehashed because we had some new members that hadn't heard all this before. So it was valuable to get them up to speed. So that group is meeting again in a week, Wednesday, the 2nd at 6 p.m. So we'll kind of see where it goes. Chair Cloutier was here, as well as Representative Stapleton. So a couple other members of the delegation just kind of listening in. So I thought it was good, Commissioner Hebert. I don't know.
No, I think it's going good. I mean, they asked good questions. EFC looks at things a little different than some of the other group does, but it was good.
We also heard that there's been no official word back yet on the letter that we wrote and had Chairman Cloutier sign to send to Taylor Caswell for Gopher money. Well, for ARPA money through Gopher. Representative Aaron called today just to say that she spoke to some folks and they said, don't send another letter because that will just annoy them.
Yeah.
So she has circulated that word to Representative Sullivan just to let the other members know that, a second letter is not going to be received very well.
I think that was the consensus anyway yesterday at the meeting.
So more to come. I guess there are meetings later this week where ARPA money is going to be discussed and our requirement will be among the topics. So keep our fingers crossed. Sullivan House update. Mary, I wanted to ask today, did they talk about a completion date? Are we narrowing in on anything for them?
No, so we have, I think we're still on that same time frame. There has been a few setbacks. We do have permanent power, which is fantastic. And so now we're focusing on those things that we need a permanent power for. One of them is the boiler system startup that was scheduled for last week. They got partway through it. There were some problems. There were some discrepancies between the way that the boiler needed to be heights versus how it was designed, so it was some extra labor, not at a cost to us. That was coordination between within Wankin Valley. So, but that did delay, so now we're scheduled to start everything up the 23rd, which I guess is tomorrow. Elevator work starts on the 24th. So all
Oh,
these
great.
things that have been, we've been waiting on is now, they're all starting to happen. So once all that stuff starts up, they did express, there are some concerns about parts and pieces that aren't available yet for the door access control as part of sort of the computer issue things that are happening. So we didn't have a lot of detail on that, but they broached that with us today. And just a lot of cleanup and punch list work, finishing trim, things like that. So
Rather than using for heat and just space heaters? or anything?
temporary heater,
Okay.
yeah.
So
Yeah.
blowing from outside one or something, okay.
Yeah, mostly just blowing it onto the ground floor and letting it work its way up.
So, yeah,
So
keep it from freezing, maybe, so.
Yeah.
Big old sale on that.
Middle of March?
Kid duty, I'm
I
so
just-
sorry.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, I think
So-
middle of March is
okay.
still,
Okay,
it's still good, maybe third week of March,
okay.
maybe, yeah, so.
All right,
It's just, there's a couple of big hurdles to get over before we can really start reeling it in, but I thought today, definitely they're focusing on how to get out of there. Other than the first floors, the ground floor is still a little bit behind, but you can tell on the upper floors, they're focusing on how to get out of there. So they had refinished the decorative stair at the front.
oh,
That looks beautiful.
Oh,
That was
gosh.
all stained with the
Okay.
first coat of finish on it. That looks really nice.
cool. And I saw the lettering on the outside, looks good, Sullivan House and the 19 in the middle, so that's pretty sweet.
Potential fire doors. On those
Oh,
staircase,
yeah,
back
so
staircase.
somewhere along the way between when the stairs on the enclosed stair at the back of the building, the existing stair, someone was being really helpful and peeled off the fire rating on the doors.
Oh, I remember hearing that
Yeah, so,
a long time ago.
yeah, so that was prior to our work.
Yeah.
But that came up with the town inspector this week, so
Okay.
that might be something that we need to look at. And you can see right where they peeled the stickers off to paint the door or whatever. So,
So is there a way to test it, to find out what the rating is? You have to replace them.
well, we had that case that came up on the nursing home survey a couple years ago, and we hired a firm at a pretty penny to come up out of Massachusetts and recertify the doors. So I think we'll need to look into some options.
Okay,
It
All right.
might be where it's just too, well, that's not too where it's, I don't know, we just need to look at some options.
okay. Any other questions on how that's coming along?
No.
Everybody, okay. Legislative items, House Bill 1565, which is the opioid trust bill that Representative Aaron sponsored on our behalf, which is gonna more than double what the county would be getting from a future settlement. There's another work session this week. It's Thursday. I'm double booked, but I think that's probably for the best. I've already been there 3 different times. I think they're sick of hearing from me. We put the call out to the other 22 entities to see if we can get a couple counties and ideally a couple reps from the municipalities to come talk to the Ways and Means Committee about what their programs that they would have in mind that they'd fund with the settlement dollars. The city of Berlin is sending somebody, and a couple counties, I think, are gonna go, but I don't know who yet. So if it's just Berlin, they're gonna see that as you guys don't care, and it's gonna be a big fat no. So I'm hoping that we can get a few other reps to go and speak to what they would do with this money.
I'll have to dig, because I think it was in the Valley News, but somebody's bright idea was, hey, there's a big pot of money coming, we can put dental benefits on Medicaid enhancement.
Well, that'll
Which
be
is a
up to
worthy
the
cause,
trust,
but
right?
not with
And-
the opiate settlement was.
Yeah. FMAP, I think we already talked about that. That was another big change. I think that's what the meeting was today. Again, I was double booked. I couldn't go to that, but I know you guys were really well in the loop, so. As far as any other current legislation that's working its way through that we've been tracking, that's probably it. RAP updates, for the Sugar River Region Destination Council. Our next session is this Thursday night at the Common Man, so Chris from Solomar is coming back. Penelope's gonna give an overview of the survey that we did back in January, the one that we had like 1,000 or so responses, just under that. And then Chris is gonna provide an overview of the plan, and then we're gonna hopefully have about 30 to 45 minutes of what we're dubbing an open mic night to let the people who have come, we've got over 45 RSVPs.
That's this Thursday.
That's this Thursday night, yep. 5:30 to 6 is kind of like a sign-in, mill around and network, and then 6 to 7:30 is the actual scheduled program. I've also included just a quick summary of a separate survey that was done just for the Destination Council. So it's like the 15 or so people that have been meeting for the last, whatever, 6-8 months. And some pretty interesting information. The survey asked, I'll just quickly run through this. What types of functions does the council think that our subsequent organization should be focused on? You can see it's marketing, it's event management, it's visitor services, leadership and coordination of all the tourism players in our region, and then boosting residents' community pride and sense of place. So they're kind of the top rated things, which I thought was pretty cool. As far as organization type, having a mandate for the organization to include both marketing and management of some activities was a pretty strong consensus. 70% supported that. They talked about the organization name. I did not make this meeting, so this was, I think, another good thing for me to maybe not be involved in.
Yeah.
And it's just great to see that the energy and the enthusiasm from the rest of the team, and I don't have to feel like I'm necessarily there, as a catalyst, because now there's this, it's got a life of its own, which is really cool. Like I told Penelope today on the phone, if I ever get hit by a bus, I feel really good that this is gonna live on after I'm gone. So, but having said that, I'm not planning on being hit by a bus. So yeah, discover Sugar River Region or discover the Sugar River Region. It sounded like that was kind of the theme that might be what emerges from some of this work. But I think Chris is also gonna have some say on that. They talked about funding just a little bit. And the funding model for this organization is still kind of firmly in the TBD. They did start to talk about it. They didn't make very much progress. So that's going to be another big topic that, again, I think Chris, as a consultant, is going to help us work our way through that. And they talked about board composition in terms of the number of board members, how long the terms are, and making sure that it's representative of the whole county from a geographical standpoint, as well as a functional standpoint. So we don't have 15 people or 11 people that are all from the same type of background. So it's good. I just included that for your edification. Also in your binders was just a one pager that Alex from the Regional Planning Commission gave us that we're going to show Thursday night to just put a very brief plug in that this trails project is ongoing. So he just gave us this one pager, which is pretty cool. There's a website at the bottom that he's launched. It's just a shell right now, but it's going to be a way for members of the public to stay tuned on the developments of this trails plan. And also perhaps to, if they want to get involved, they'll be able to just track the progress and start showing up to meetings if they want to. So some good stuff there. Nothing new on the workforce development task force for this report. I talked about the trails project and the SEDS. They also had another meeting last week that I missed. So it's moving forward, which is really good. I don't know if they're going to make the April 15th deadline, but it's going to be pretty close. So good stuff.
That will happen.
And just like that, concludes my report. Pending any questions?
No questions for me. No?
Nope, all set.
Hey, any old business? Nothing. Have any minutes?
I've got one, long story short, we have a guy that's hunted on the property for a couple of years, and I knew he was a teacher, but didn't know he teaches civics in Claremont. And he didn't know I was a county commissioner until he was doing some research for his class. And long story short, I am speaking tomorrow to his civics class at Stevens. Just about what county government does. And I said, that's not new. I have to explain that to everyone.
Seems to be the way, isn't it?
That'll be tomorrow morning at 7:45.
Well, my daughter's gonna give her a hard time, please.
It sounded like it was only 5 or 6, fairly small class, so.
Can we give you a phone call at 7:30?
Hopefully.
Zing.
A zing Lionel on his phone. So.
All right, we need you want this motion to authorize the county manager?
Actually, no, so this was, I left it on the agenda so we can talk about it, but I wanted you to know, learning how to say no is not something I've been really good at. This is something I'm gonna say no to. I just reassessed kind of what we have on our plate for the next 2 months, 5 months, looking at the hiring processes for both Dave and Ted. We've got really sensitive and significant issues on the budget when it comes to this wage study. I just can't do this as well and not have something else fall through the cracks. Maybe next year. And I do think this possibly feeds into another potential use for some ARPA funding if we wanted to, hire an economic development consultant to help with some projects that maybe are identified through our destination development process.
Yeah.
There's another way we can do that short of this. I mean, this would entail selling tax credits again and kind of going through that whole thing. There's a lot on the back end, to say nothing about writing the grant application up front. And I just don't have time. So I just don't think we can support this year, maybe next year.
No. All right. Write that down. Derek said no.
Yeah.
And that'll be in the minutes.
Well, next year it'll be, why are we doing anything? You say no. Yeah.
All right, and then our next meeting is March 7th.
And then if we start with it on public at 2, or we can put it on the back end, but
No, we might as well start it. I'm fine with starting it too.
okay.
You all set with that, Joe?
And I'm changing
Earlier the better. Yep, I'm okay with it.
Yeah.
You missing pool time down there? You missing the
Little
swimming
bit.
pool?
A little bit, it's 85 degrees.
Holy crap. Supposedly about 50 out, although it wasn't as warm as they were talking about this morning. Holy crap.
Anybody from the public? Nobody on? We don't have any
Well,
meeting
after a
minutes?
Slow start, we picked up speed. Move to adjourn.
I'll second.
In favor?
Aye.
All right,
Aye.
well, thank you all for being patient, hanging out.
No problem. Thank you.
Yes, and my apologies again.
Now
Somehow I was just figuring out, it was 3 o'clock is hardwired.
Thanks for.
Bye, see you guys
yeah,
later.
so I like to give you a heads up, when I do that with one of your folks, but we were literally
Larry, is
talking
that
about
something
it,
you
and
needed to talk about on that
Beginning
other
of the
subject
CIP
or
thing.
no?
I put Dave on the spot. I said,
What,
"Give
when
me
I
one
said
of your guys."
non-public? No.
You haven't had one in a
It was-
while, and then I said, "Mary, what about you?" And she's.
Are we on there?
We are.
Oh,
Well, it's supposed to be.
That's super.
I hit end, and then it's just lets you think about it.
Mary's gonna be
Record.